Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 16, 2017 Board of Selectmen's meeting. We have, Mr. Mayo, public participation that you know of?
No one has signed in.
Okay, then let's move on to item number 2 of the agenda. Approval of the minutes of the regular board meetings of September 25th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda would be the fiscal update. Mr. Mayo, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As the board is aware, Article 1 at our town meeting on November 6th is going to discuss how we finished out fiscal year 17, which ended on June 30th, 2017. So let me briefly go through this so you get a little bit of an update and a heads up on what will happen at town meeting. I always like to start where we started. So we started fiscal year 17, which began on July 1st, 2016, when we realized that the state had certified our free cash at a little over $9 million. From that free cash, we used $2 million worth of free cash to balance the budget in the November 2016 town meeting. We used $100,000 for legal damages. We used, in our May town meeting, $20,000 for police indemnification. We used $165,000 for fire department supplement, and we used $112,190 for the trash supplement. So, all in all, we used almost $2.4 million worth of free cash to balance our budget. Now, this was all by design, or at least the $2 million was by design. That's something that we've worked out over the last few years with the Finance Committee, and we certainly seem to be going on a very right and proper track. So when I think about what's happening at the end of the year and how we're moving on, I always think about how would this all work if everything came in as I had forecasted. And when we put our budget into the State Department of Revenue, we have to forecast where our numbers are going to be, what we're going to get for receipts, for permits, for excise tax on automobiles. And I look at that very, very carefully, and I really am very conservative all that. In fact, Selectman Dombrowski, a former Finance Committee member, he knows that they give me quite a hard time on that, but that's okay. It's all by design. We have a good time there. So if everything came in the way that I had thought, or the way that we had projected, and that if every department spent every dollar worth of their budget, okay, we would have ended up the year 2017 with about $7 million in free cash. Now, we know that that doesn't happen, you know. Money comes in and ebbs and flows depending on what's happening, and people are buying new cars, what's happening with building permit fees and things like that. But also, and probably more importantly, our department heads are very, very careful with what they spend, and we certainly do appreciate that. So what happens is this free cash number gets replenished. So how do we replenish free cash? Again, it's returns from departments on their budgets, and it's surplus in projected revenue. So one of the things that I will go through when we do the fiscal report at the town meeting is really go through and how each department did. So those numbers are in now, and I'm going to give you a little heads up on that. And I think that what's important is that the philosophy that we've worked with our department heads, and I think the philosophy that has been embodied by the Finance Committee and by certainly this Board of Selectmen is that if a department comes in a little bit lower on their budget from year to year, so they didn't spend everything, there's no pressure. They feel, I believe they feel no pressure. We better spend because Steve's going to cut our budget, or the selectmen are going to cut our budget next year. That doesn't happen. We look very carefully at what they do, and if we think that things are being overspent, we certainly stop them, but there's no rush to spend at the end of the year for things maybe they don't need. I like having it returned to the general fund. So last year, our departments did very good, very well. General government, which think of that of your town hall departments, they returned $186,000. Police and fire and building returned a little over $50,000. Human Services, think of that as your senior center and items like that, $46,000. Public Works, with all the burdens we put on them, $34,000. Education returned $43,000. That includes the vocational school, which actually returned $27,000 to us this year. It's in that, embedded in that number, because after town meeting, after we had set the budget, the state actually gave them a little bit more money for transportation. So we certainly were able to partake in that. Unclassified, which is basically the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee has $300,000 worth of reserve fund transfers. They returned a good amount of that this year, so they returned 201. Benefits, which some of the salaries there. And again, the big return is on group insurance. And I'll tell you, on group insurance, we always have, and since I've been here, a good cushion for a number of reasons is that under our union contracts, either new hirees or, someone's spouse loses their insurance or something, our employees can get on our insurance at any time. Okay, so we have to make sure that we have that available in the budget. I'd hate to come back to the board halfway through the year and say, we need to get some money for group insurance. So actually, over the years, that's been very good about returning items. So all in all, $1 million was returned to the town by our town departments. The other item that is not shown here, but we get an estimate of charter school expenditures in the beginning of the year, and that actually came in a little bit lower than we thought, so about $180,000 was returned to us there. So then we go to the revenue side, and please, if there's any questions, Mr. Chairman, please have people jump in. Actual revenues came in at $7.7 million. Forecasted revenues were $6 million. Now, here's where I am very careful on this, because all you need is a bad year in revenues, and we could really be hurt. But let me tell you a couple things that happened. Motor vehicle excise tax, we had projected $3.6 million. That came in at $4.3. Kind of great. More people are moving to Wakefield, are buying new cars. The problem with excise tax is that that's going to go down every year, because from your own car, year 2, your excise tax goes down. So unless people keep buying new cars, that goes down. Meals tax, we had projected $201,000. That came in at $281,000. Okay, I think we had a little bit of timing issue there. We had a little bit more. Room tax, we had projected $550,000, came in at $618,000. The big one here was license and permits. We are undergoing somewhat of a building boom. That came in about $600,000 more than we had projected. Investments came in $200,000 lower. I think we're going to see an upswing this year, though. So we generate about $6 million. We think $6 million in forecasted revenues. We work very carefully with the Department of Revenue to make sure that we're doing this in a very consistent and conservative manner. We have been moving that number up, and for this fiscal year, 2018, that we're in right now, we had projected 6.3%. So about a 4% increase. I think that is certainly accurate. We're going to hit it, probably exceed it. But when we put in our money, put in our tax recap to get our tax rates certified by the Department of Revenue, if they see a really big jump in things like that, they're going to say, well, wait a minute, we're not sure you're doing things correctly over there. So that's how we've looked at it in that way. So year-end free cash at $9.6 million. And really, the actual amount is $9,621,013. In my memory, that's the highest we've ever been in free cash. And I think it's a great testament to the hard work done by this board and by the Finance Committee together, and by our department heads. We don't look, and our stabilization is $3 million. So that is a healthy way to be. We do have some financial policies. I will tell you that not every community has these. We have them. We like to keep our stabilization fund at a minimum of 3% of operating budgets. I think that's something we may want to look at in a few more years. Policy, we should be at $2.5 million. We're a little bit high on $3 million. I think maybe the policy should be increased, and I think we should look towards maybe putting some money away in there. And you can see where our stabilization fund has gone over the years, with a healthier balance and a good percentage of our budget. Free cash. our policy should be around $7 million. Current amount is 9.6. Again, the highest I can recall. Our policy calls for keeping that at 8% of our budgets. I think that's really also another good number. And you can see where our free cash has really skyrocketed over the last few years. We were really down at some point a few years ago, under $2 million in free cash. Brings a lot of sleepless nights when the state cuts your aid and you have no free cash to cover that, which did happen in 2008. So that's something we're very careful of. So again, this year, when we go to town meeting in November, we are going to look to, again, use free cash to balance the budget and use free cash for the fire contract, which will be coming up to this evening as well. When all of these things come in, we're still in a very, very healthy position on our free cash at above $7 million, which I believe we will certainly replenish again at the end of this year. And this really is part of a very long-term strategy that we worked out when we did increase the school budget a few years ago. We worked out with the Finance Committee because we're actually projecting down 8-10 fiscal years, and we see where we're looking at our new growth. We see where our costs are going to be. And what I can see from this, and something that I'll be bringing back forward to the board as we get a little farther along down the road here, probably in the next couple of meetings, as we talk about fiscal year 2019 and beyond, because we're going to start doing budgets again in not too long, is that we do have some, I think, very exciting and aggressive programs we want to do. We want to look at our downtown. We want to look at roads. We're going to have a presentation on the public safety building tonight. The question that we have, DPW garage in the future, question is we have, and what we'll be working with is how do we fund these through our bonding program? How do we fund these within the tax levy? I think we're very excited to look and figure out how we can do this here. We're doing this together while we're also funding OPEB, which is embedded in the budget. So I think that when you look at where we are financially, and we're talking about these exciting items down the road that I think will certainly be able to fit into our tax levy, we're a lot better off than some of our neighbors who are talking about how do they explain having an operational override in the near future. I don't see that from what we're projecting out. I actually see projecting out in some pretty good surpluses, and part of that tonight, when we have our tax classification hearing, is we're going to be shown that we're actually going to also not only have reserves for the town, but some reserves, it's suggested, will stay in the hands of the taxpayers. So they will be, we're leaving $630,000 in their pocket to help them out a little bit. So I think it's a really good story. I do appreciate, again, all the work that the department heads and people that work with me on this. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I am happy for any questions you have.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for a great presentation and for taking care of our finances and presenting us with the best options available for us to consider and to vote on. Members of the board.
Quick question. How old are the policies, Steve?
We look at them every year. Probably they're 2009, 2010-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. It's something that I brought in.
Okay.
Tony?
A quick one for you, Steve. First of all, fantastic job with this. Fantastic job in managing the town's finances. The $100K in legal damages, can you elaborate that?
That was the money, last year we went to town meeting, we can talk about it again tonight, for Green Street.
The Green Street, yeah.
Yeah, and
that's what I
was
thought.
for
I
the
wasn't
walls,
sure.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, hearing no more comments, Mr. Mayor, thank you once again.
Thank you.
A great presentation and in breakneck speed. Did a great job. Thank you. So let's move on, please, with the next item on the agenda. We have 5 minutes that we can move into. Let's do the change of manager for Indian Flames, Inc. So, okay, and how are you? So, They're gonna handle this on their own.
I think they're on their own, yeah. I think it's just a simple change of manager.
So could you please explain what you would like to do?
Yes, the previous manager for our Indian Flames Inc. He has some family emergency, so he need to live to India for like a while, like a long term. So that's why Shankar Ganesh Krishnamurthy, he's one of our partners, and then he has his previous manager experience at the other units, other restaurants what we have in Newton. Then we did a change of manager over there, and then he's going to be the change of manager over here. Yeah.
And you looking for us to now do the
Just
change of
do
management
the change of
and then
management.
file the paperwork with the ABCC?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. And of course, the fingerprinting and all that is taken care of? They're all set with everything? Excellent, excellent. Questions from the members of the board? We can make this real quick, and then all you need is a vote from the board.
That's it.
To make it to approve the
Yep.
manager. Then I'll entertain a motion from the board to approve the change of manager at Indian Flames.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent.
Thank you.
very much.
Good
Great
luck.
job.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Change of manager for the Knights of Columbus.
I don't see anybody here from the Knights of Columbus. Why are you
They don't want to change it.
Mr. Muse isn't here?
Mr. Muse is not here.
So how do we proceed, Mr. Muse?
Well, I think that we'll pinch hit for them then. They would like to appoint Joe Cucarulo and Rick Muse as joint bar managers. They will be fingerprinted?
Yes.
They will be fingerprinted, yes. One of our clubs in town, they do a lot of good work and no issues.
Do we have any comments from the board?
I think otherwise, just reviewing the applications, everything appeared to be in order. I
Yes,
believe,
yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Yes.
You know, in these organizations, people come and people leave, so it sometimes hard.
So although they're not, we've all had a chance to look at
Yeah.
the materials in advance, so.
I move that we accept the change in manager at the Knights of Columbus.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Common victuals license?
Sure.
Common victuals license application, Honeydew Donuts, 915 Main Street.
Yeah, I think this is the one in Greenwood, and I think this is just a change in ownership. It would be subject to the Board of Health. I don't anticipate any changes. It's just a change in ownership there.
So for us, what that,
We would just approve a common victuals license for the
thank you.
new owner.
Any comments from members of the board?
Why are they not here?
I don't know. I don't know why they're not here.
Do
I
we
think
want?
my only reservation is that when we have these new owners coming in, I think it's important that the board impart upon them, you know, what our hopes and expectations are in terms of them being a partner in, you know, our downtown development, Greenwood development, and the like. And so I'm a little bit concerned that they're not here to hear that. And to commit to us, you know, that they're interested in being a partner for the community.
We could certainly bring them in.
No,
If you want to table it, we could bring them in.
It's up to, it's up to, is that what you like to do?
I think it makes sense.
So the request now is to table the approval to the common victuals license application for Honeydew Donuts until they can present themselves before this board. So that would be our next meeting?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, thank you.
So is that, did Ed make that motion?
Ed made the
I did.
motion, who seconded?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Let us move into our 7:20 public hearing, please. We have Verizon to discuss Emerson Street and Chestnut Street.
Roll call to go into the public hearing.
I'll need a roll call, please, to go into public hearing.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Sir, please introduce yourself to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name's Everett Bryan. I'm a rights-of-way engineer with Engineering and Data Solutions representing Verizon New England at 125 High Street in Boston. Our petition this evening is to place underground conduit on Emerson and Chestnut Street from an existing pole on Emerson around the corner on Chestnut to serve number 47 Chestnut Street. And this is due to a trespass situation there now, then we need to place this conduit to correct that.
Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the documentation that was supplied us? Does anyone have any questions regarding the request before us? Tony?
Are we up to date with all the wires with Verizon as far as coming down and being moved at the head of the lake and the poles?
Yes, the head of the lake is finally done.
Okay. Otherwise, we're going to hold them hostage.
Yeah, I was going to ask the chief.
Well, can we still hold them hostage for the poles that are doubled within the
Do
town?
whatever you want, Mr. Chief.
Can someone give us, do you have the ability to give us an update on the dual pole situation within this town that's been an ongoing issue now for at least 5 years that I know of?
No, Mr. Chairman, I didn't come prepared to give you any information on that this evening. Our Public Affairs Department handles that normally in coordination with the other utilities on the poles.
Okay. What is the wish of the board at this time?
I mean, if there are ongoing issues with an entity that's coming before asking for permission, I would think we should resolve those unresolved issues first. Would that not make sense? Or at least get an update or have some kind of understanding?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Mayo on this for a second right now. What do we have as far as this? We've been trying to get these poles singular for a long time now. We have some that
There
are
is,
quarters,
yeah.
halves, and some streets are like every
Right.
pole.
The problem is, and there is a listing at the Department of Public Utilities where you can supposedly go through and get some help, but what happens is that they come off the poles or go on the new pole, kind of in the order that they are, starting from the top and going down. So invariably, it seems that, in my experience, Verizon is always one of the last to come in and come off the poles. And we've had these discussions before with Mr. Bryan. It is very frustrating. We've worked with the state legislature on legislation to, from what my standpoint would be, where we have a municipal gas and light, to allow us to do the work. I'd rather have the work done than charge back. And I'm not interested in fining. We want it done and cleaned up. The problem that we run into in instances like this is that you have a homeowner under no fault of their own. They need to get this, and they're having some issues. So we're in a tough place, to be perfectly honest. I'm very happy to reach out through our light department, again, through their public affairs department, but I will tell you it is a very frustrating on my part.
So what I'm hearing then is that we should really address this to the proper department within Verizon and deal with the matter before us that is now at a request of the homeowner as well.
Well, I think it affects a homeowner.
It affects the homeowner. So do we
That's
want-
the problem.
So do we really want to affect the homeowner in any large capacity now, or just approve and allow them to get things resolved?
Is the homeowner not getting service currently?
I believe they do have service currently, but this has been, may I say, this has been going on for several months now, and we have a short time frame in this construction season to get this done this year. So I'd encourage the board not to delay it further or disappoint this property owners that are brought this issue to our attention.
Yes.
Chairman, I think it sounds like we need to keep them separate issues, though I do agree when you have the time to resolve other outstanding issues, to hold you hostage per se it makes sense in many cases, but this may not be the time to do it. Is there, Steve, is there any other, do we have any direct contact?
Yeah, we do, and we can probably bring them in.
Yeah, just.
We can bring them
that
in
would
with the
be-
light department and together.
That'd be
kind of, I
my
think.
humble suggestion. I think that holding them hostage won't, I don't think, do anything to help the current situation, and it may cause other problems for the homeowner. But I think it's a good thing to get that moving with the direct source and
Do we have
on the
a
other
mo-
issue.
Do we have a motion from anyone on the floor as far as a movement on this? As to which way, one way or the other?
I would move that we approve the Verizon request for Emerson Street and Chestnut Street, number one, and number two, ask Steve to bring in a representative from Verizon with the gas and light department to put their feet to the fire with regard to the double poles.
Right, I second both those as well.
Discussion on the second?
How do we know that the second part will happen, though? You know, I'm just wondering how.
I'm not sure. The second part might not, but to me, it's completely bifurcated. I don't want to hold a resident hostage when it has nothing to do with the double polls.
Okay.
I
Tom?
agree with Ian, I don't want to hold one of our own hostage, but Mr. Bryant, if you're to come before this board again, be prepared for if this issue is still not fixed, just be prepared to get a little pushback from us.
I understand.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the matter? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
sir. Let's move on to our next public hearing. Oh, no, we don't, we can't. I have 5 minutes according to my watch.
It's not 7:30?
Let's move to the request to advertise for members to the Commission on Disabilities. We need a vote on that approval. May I have a motion then to advertise for members to the Commission on Disabilities?
So moved.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. I'll need a motion then for the appointment of a special municipal employee for purposes of zoning and land use regulation.
Want me to jump in?
Mr.
Yes, please.
Mayo.
Okay, great. As with the Galvin School, okay, the Walton School is going to require zoning relief, probably for parking, probably for an extension of a non-conforming use. When we looked at the Galvin a few years ago, the Permanent Building Committee actually came before this board and met with the board and requested, that they did want to have representation there. Now, it becomes, and they didn't want to pay for it, the other thing, and we certainly as a town didn't want to pay for that. So what happens is town council got together on this, and he and I are both recommending that we do the same thing we did a few years ago in front of the Galvin, that the first would move to reaffirm a vote we took years ago that basically creates a class of pro bono lawyers who would enjoy special municipal employee status, meaning that while they were doing this particular pro bono job, they would not be prevented from representing private parties before local boards just because they volunteered in this one case. Note that someone like town council or our labor council was on retainer, so to speak, can never take any action, in front of any boards or against the town. So Tom Mullen can only represent the town in any matter. The second motion would appoint a specific attorney to do that. Like we did in Galvin School, one local attorney has volunteered his time pro bono. He handled the Galvin School matter very, very well. And in this case, both of his children, although they attended Galvin, they attended the Walton School. So I would recommend that we approve both motions, one of which would be to set up the class, and the other one would be to appoint Brian McGrail as special municipal zoning counsel to represent the board in its capacity as owner of the Walton School to seek zoning relief in front of the Board of Appeals in connection with the planned improvements of Walton School. Such representation to be pro bono and to commence upon the filing of a petition with the Board of Appeals. So those would be the two motions I would like to see, Mr. Chairman, as would Town Council.
I have a motion from the floor.
On the appointment of Brian McGrail, I think the work that was done on the Galvin was impeccable. I think it went through easily. I think knowing the community is very important, and certainly at the Walton, knowing that neighborhood will be beneficial, I believe, for all parties involved. So I have no problem with that appointment for this position.
Thank you. So I need a motion then for the appointment of special municipal employee for purposes of zoning and land use regulation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll entertain a motion then for the appointment of a special municipal employee as zoning counsel regarding Walton School.
Move.
Second.
Moving second, it's discussion.
Yep.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Let us move on now then back to the 7:30 public hearing for tax classification. Mr. Centineo.
I need the conch to speak.
Good evening, Victor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time of year again. I have with me Jane Daddario, our
We have to close it. Please. Excuse me. We missed a couple of things.
Yeah, you have to ask the public who wanted to participate in the last one.
Right, public participation in the last one, and then we also have to close the last public hearing too. So we moved along. Okay, so,
She's not champion,
okay, so let's go into a roll call vote to open up the public hearing for the tax classification. Aye. Aye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman. I have with us Jane Daddario, member of our board, longtime member, who recently earned her Massachusetts Accredited Assessor designation from the Massachusetts Assessing Officers Association. A few years of course work and study. And we have our chairman, Sebastian Tyne. Our other member, Walter Schofield, couldn't be here because he's traveling for business. Well, here we are, 2018 classification presentation. As you know, there are 4 actions required by the Board of Selectmen. The first is selection of a minimum residential factor, selection of an open space discount, granting of a residential exemption, and/or the granting of a small commercial exemption. Minimum residential factor. If a factor of 1 were to be chosen, we'd have a single tax rate of $14.63 per thousand. Pretty simple to figure out. Take the total tax levy divided by the total value of the community and multiply it by 1,000. Chapter 200 of the Mass General Laws allows Wakefield to select a factor less than 1, thereby shifting more of the tax burden onto commercial properties. Historically, Wakefield has chosen the maximum allowable shift factor afforded under state law. Let's see here. Wow, that did not come through. A note to self, check your fonts next year. For the past several years, the Board of Selectmen has opted to raise the tax levy less than the maximum allowable limit under Proposition 2.5. This year, the board has directed that we leave an additional $627,000 of tax levy on the table. In doing so, the residential tax rate is reduced by 12 cents, and the commercial, industrial, and personal rate is reduced by 23 cents. It translates into a savings of $60 for the average single-family taxpayer and about $300 for the average commercial property. There are several options for shifting available. We can go to a max shift of 175%. As you can see, CIP Shifter 1 gives us a 1 tax rate of $14.63, but going up to 175, it drops the residential rate down to $12.95, and the commercial industrial rate goes up to $25.61. For fiscal 18, the average single-family value is $498,500. In the chart below, for those of you that, well, geez, I really have to make this darker. I'm sorry about that. You see the effect it has on the tax bill, 1 shift versus 1.75, the difference being $838. By shifting to the max as opposed to a single tax rate, that's how much you save the average single-family taxpayer. And for commercial industrial properties, the average value is a little over $1.3 million, and you see the net effect there by raising the factor and the amount of the average bill, about $33,000. At the maximum allowable shift, the selected minimum residential factor would be 0.885088. Our estimated tax rates would be $12.95 residential and $25.61 for commercial, industrial, and personal. Please note, these could change by a penny as we go through the state approval process of our tax recap sheets. Next page is our average tax bills comparing 17 to 18. As you can see, the average single-family value went up about 5.65%. Tax rate went down 8 cents. The average residential bill went up $308, or approximately 5%. Average commercial went up about 5.65%. That tax rate went down 34 cents, but their average bill went up about $1,374, or 4.25%. Fiscal 18 represents the fourth year of the full amount of the debt exclusion for the Galvin Middle School. The debt exclusion adds a little over $2.4 million to the tax levy. It adds 44 cents to the residential tax rate, or $219 to the average single-family tax bill, which, you know, if our total average single-family tax bill increase was $308 and $219 was simply for the Galvin, not too bad. And it adds 88 cents to the CIP rate, or $1,154 to that average tax bill. Real estate sales activity. As you know, assessments are a year or two behind current market conditions by design. So the assessments folks will see on their tax bills come January will be representative of all sales during calendar year 2016. Last assessments were from 15, and if you look at the market activity, it's overall the average sale price was up about 4.25%. Number of sales relatively stable, 218 and 215 and 231 in 2016, with days on market pretty much the same. An open space discount. Mass General Law, it's defined as land which is not otherwise classified as residential, commercial, or chapter land. We have no such property in our community that fits the description to be designated as open space. And a residential exemption. Residential exemption of up to 35% of the average residential value could be granted. It's only been adopted in a handful of communities, Boston, Cambridge, Chelsea, and Brookline, for example. If we were to apply something here, the tax rate would go from $12.95 to $18.69. The break-even point would be $541,900. Approximately 25% of the homes in town will be shouldering the burden for everybody else, and it's something that isn't designed to work in a community like this that's largely residential and owner-occupied. Small commercial exemption. An exemption of up to 10% of the property valuation for commercial properties only. Eligible businesses cannot have more than 10 employees as certified by the Department of Employment and Training. Building value cannot exceed $1 million. One business in a building could not qualify unless every other business in that building also qualified. The exemption goes to the building owner. And we're unaware of any businesses in town that meet that stringent criteria to qualify for an exemption. Honestly, if there are, there might be 2 or 3 that we see every year as a result of reviewing the list that are sent to us. The next page just tells us how we stack up against the surrounding communities, what their average single-family tax bills are, and their average values. Page after talks about the tax shift, and really, you know, Saugus is the one out there. Saugus and Wakefield both can go to a maximum shift amount of 175. Saugus, because they have Route 1 going through their community, they have a lot more capacity to shift, thereby their average residential value would be lower. Average residential tax bill would be cheaper. And just a list of average single-family tax bills from 2006 to present, and same thing with commercial values. Are there any questions?
Members of the board, does anyone have any questions on the presentation that was presented to us? Ed?
Putting this together, it's very comprehensive. One of the questions, or I guess more, it's a concern that I have, is in looking at the average residential tax bill, we're talking about, on average, a 5% increase for this year, and I don't think most homeowners are realizing a 5% increase, say, in their income, especially our seniors. And in looking at this 5%, what can we do as a board in order to get the percentage increase, if there is to be one, more in line, say, with the inflation or just expected increases in income? Because I think right now, if you look at the chart you have here from 2006 to the present, I mean, in 2006, the single-family tax bill was about $3,800. Now it's projected to be about $6,500. And I look at the commercial in comparison, and when you look at the percent changes there, it seems like, historically, I know they've been all over the place, but some years they've actually been considerably, lower than the residential on that. And I know that it's different dollars, but ultimately we're still talking about the percentages here. So I guess I just have a real concern that we're looking at another 5% increase this year, and I don't think people, the residents, can keep pace. And I'm trying to figure out how we as a board can structure this somewhat differently so that we're more aligned with what people can afford.
A little bit beyond what we're here to discuss, but this board has already taken action through the years by increasing the amount of the elderly exemption that's already on the books for the state. It's a bunch of years ago, it was $500 for qualified seniors, and we have anywhere from 75 to 80 seniors a year that qualify for that. This board has recommended to town meeting that we raise it twice. That's up to $1,000. Thing with the residential increase that coincides from 2006 to now, there's been explosive growth on the residential side of the ledger. There's no denying it, which does create what's called a reverse shift in the tax rate. As the residential base grows far beyond what the commercial base does, it inhibits our ability to shift tax dollars over to that side. Stimulating more commercial development might help stem that tide. There are other communities that have enacted home rule petition type of legislation to assist seniors. I happen to work in one of those communities over in Reading. It's only the third community in the state to attempt something like that. It's something that may become a local option for communities in the next 2 years. That's what I'm hopeful. That's how we try to design it over there, make it one size fits all so more communities can adopt it. That's all I have for you now.
I mean, look at this, and I know a few meetings ago we were talking about the water increases. I think that might have been a 5% increase as well. And while I'm glad to see that property values are going up, in real dollars for folks, as much as they appreciate the value of their property going up, they have a higher tax bill, consequently. And I just think about the seniors and even the working families here, and this 5% just doesn't feel like it's keeping pace, with where their incomes are. And I think we as a board need to think more creatively about what we can do. And so I don't know what the next action step is with that, but I feel like we need to have a better understanding of what we can do going forward, because these increases, it's easy for us to look at a number on paper and all the numbers seem to align, but I mean, people are writing the checks for these things. I know you had mentioned the Reading program for the seniors specifically, what are your thoughts on that program here in Wakefield, adopting a similar program here, timing and the like?
Well, given it's my first year doing it in Reading, I haven't assembled a report for the legislature per their request after we administer this. With anything new, I take a cautious approach. What works there may not work right out of the gate right here. Plus, what we assembled over there in Reading might need some fine-tuning before we're bringing out more wide scale. But I would like to think over the next 2 years or so, either through the state adopting a special type of local option exemption for communities to take advantage of, or Wakefield saying, hey, you've got a couple of years of good data here, how'd it work out? All right, let's try this. One of those two ways, I think, may be ready to do something here about 2 years down the road.
I just think we need to do better. I mean, we're looking at this. I think we need to be creative and figure out something, because these 5% increases every time we're talking about water, taxes and the like. I mean, I think our residents are getting buried.
Right, and to talk on your point, that's happening now because of the boom in the housing market, okay? When the housing market goes down, you're not going to see the 5% increase because the values of the houses are going to go down as well, too.
I know, but I think it's...
So my question, let me finish though. What's my question? So my question back to you is, what would you think that we could do at this present time? Or do you think there's something that we should be working on in the future?
Well, I mean, I think that we shouldn't be hoping for property values to go down so people can more affordably pay their taxes. So I think that's a very, unfortunate way of looking at it. So I think we as a board have to figure out, and I don't know if there are other communities that have had other, I realize, Victor, that you're at the forefront of this Reading plan for seniors. I don't know what other communities are doing, but I feel like we have to scrutinize this a bit more. I read through the packet. I met with you, Victor, previously. I read through the packet subsequent to that. I was thinking to myself, gosh, 5% here, 5% there. What can we do? And I don't know. I want to encourage properties obviously to increase in value, but I also don't want that to come at the price of taxpayers being priced out of the community.
Well, if it's of comfort, while the 5% may sound, like a big number, the increase this year, as I stated earlier, for the average homes, $308, $219 of which is for the magnificent Galvin School. Our tax collection rate is off the charts. We don't have a lot of properties going to tax title, which would be indicative of systemic problems of people not being able to afford taxes. I sound like a robot when I say that, but...
You have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Victor, for putting this all together. But to what Ed, we're a victim of our own success, Ed. We're seeing homes getting snapped up in 24 hours with bidding wars that are homes that are going for $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 over asking price, and people coming in with cash and no contingencies. And historically, this board has kept the Prop 2.5 increases, below that 2.5 level. So we've done a pretty decent job there. And Victor, I know you've done some outreach with seniors at the senior center. If you can continue to do that, and maybe we can get more seniors to take advantage of some of the programs that are out there, that'd be great. If you need help, I'll be more than happy to sit with you for an afternoon down there. But to Ed's point, we are pricing some people out. But again, it's the Galvin people are coming to Wakefield for the school system. People are coming in here for our way of life, and it's great. But again, to your point again, how we can maybe counter these increases is grow that commercial tax base. And we've talked about maybe having a manager of business development or a team of business development managers to bring in some of those new businesses. I've been saying this for a number of years. That hotel at the head of the lake in that office park is probably the greatest single resource we have in this town to really, put something in there that's going to work and generate income and generate taxes, and maybe we can lower, some of the other stuff out there. But again, thank you again.
Anyone else from the board? Comments? Public. Yeah. Anyone from the public have anything that they would like to ask? Hearing none, should I close public?
Public hold it, yeah.
Okay, hearing no comments further from the board and Hearing no comments from the public, I'll do a roll call vote to close the public,
And then we'll vote.
and then we'll vote.
Okay.
Roll call?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. So now we need to move into the 4 votes that are necessary by this board regarding the tax classification. So our first item on the agenda for voting, it would be the selection of the minimum residential factor. So right now, it is being recommended to us that we do the full shift of 1.75 to put the residential tax rate at 12.95.
And Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Technically, the factor you would be recommending?
Is 88.5087.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion or comments from the board at this point? We got,
That just keeps it as low as we can for the
Yes.
residents.
that's correct.
I move that we accept the maximum shift of the 88.5087.
5087. In a second,
Second.
any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. The next is selection of an open space discount. We are being advised not to issue the open space discount and leave things status quo.
I move that we not accept the open space discount because I don't believe we have any open spaces that fit it
Nothing
in the
qualifies.
town.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Granting of a residential exemption, we are being advised not to authorize the residential exception at this point, because there's very few that would even qualify for it. Correct. No motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Granting of a small commercial exemption. Once again, the recommendation is not to.
I move that we do not grant the small commercial exemption for similar reasons as to the open space.
Seconded.
Seconded, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for
Thank you
coming
very
in.
much.
Greatly appreciate it.
Green Street, excuse me, 7A.
Yes. Our next item on the agenda is item 7A, Green Street, Main Street Declaration of Emergency Repair. Mr. Stinson and Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Good evening, thank you. I have with me my water sewer supervisor, Steve Fitzpatrick, and we will be able to kind of address any questions you may have, but the request is to declare the Green Street water main break as an emergency. The reason that you're doing that is we had to bring in a contractor to assist us because we don't have the necessary equipment that could handle that size of a break. Doing it as part of the emergency, that lets us hire that contractor per se. So that is the request. Some things, and I'll talk about the break a little bit. First, I want to commend my water division, sewer division staff, highway division staff, forestry and park division staff, engineering staff, my stormwater manager, and especially my water and sewer supervisor, Steve Fitzpatrick, for outstanding response and job that they performed in getting the repair done, water back online, and the roadway open. It was a full team effort from everyone in Public Works. Also want to thank and commend the Municipal Light and Gas Department, Police Department, and Fire Department for their tremendous assistance and support. Emergencies like that don't happen by any one person. It takes a lot of people to make it work and work smoothly. Finally, I want to thank and commend, we utilized 4 contractors. That for the emergency. The big one was Spencer Contracting, which did the water main repair. And Truax, who we do have under contract for cleaning of drains and sewer lines. Service Pumping and Drain, who we had to call in on a short notice to do some cleaning of sewer and drain lines and manholes. And also DNR Paving, who came in and assisted us to get the paving of that road done on Friday. All four of those companies dropped what they were doing to come in and assist us. And that's from building strong relationships over the years with them. And they came in and assisted us and put other clients off that they had scheduled to do work for. They all did an outstanding job. I can't speak highly enough of everybody involved. The ability, as I said, of all divisions and our private contractors to make this repair, it's an emergency. Our goal is to get the roads open, the water back online, and it was tremendous team effort. I can't say that enough. A couple things on the break. Break happened at 1 a.m. on Tuesday morning, October 10th. Water was turned off by 2 a.m., which is a great response to get people out of bed and get them there to do that. We only had a total of 9 houses without water, and 6 of those houses had water back by 9 p.m., approximately 9 p.m., 9:30 on Tuesday evening, and the other 3 had water back by around 2 a.m. on Wednesday morning. And those 3 are on temporary water right now until we get a bacteria test that allows us to put them back on regular water service. We had Main Street open for 2 lanes of traffic by 8:10 Tuesday morning, and that DPW staff worked to clean all the debris out of Main Street, remove hot top there and get that opened up, because Main Street, obviously, as you know, is very busy. Buses traveling down that, a lot of commercial vehicles. So we were able to do that in a short period of time. The main, we removed, the water main break happened about 210 feet from the intersection of Main and Green Street. And it's a 16-inch main that's in the roadway. That main, of that size, does a tremendous amount of damage, unfortunately. And it tore out the roadway to the point where the contractor who we had hired couldn't even get his equipment up to get to the break. So we had to dig out the road, get it graded so he could get his equipment up there. What we did in this break is normally we will fix the break, and that's what you do in an emergency. Unfortunately, we had no idea, because it's underground, what else was compromised in that area. So we removed 200 feet of 16-inch water main and installed 200 feet of 16-inch water main in about 19 hours, which was a tremendous effort. That doesn't count the time of prepping the road to get so we could get up to start. We installed, as part of that, 16-inch water gate, so we have another place to shut off. Redid 3 water services, 3 sewer services, and put a new line in for the fire hydrant that was needed down at the bottom of Main and Green Street. Green Street was open to 1 lane of traffic at approximately 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, October 11th. So that was a tremendous accomplishment. It was in gravel, but it was open. The sewer and drain line cleaning has been ongoing. One of the things that happens with a break like this, all the gravel washes into the manholes and into the pipes for sewer and drain, and it becomes like glue. And when we were cleaning Main Street with our Bobcat, the bucket was full, and they were trying to bang that bucket to free it up, and the gravel that they were scraping up wouldn't come out. It's just like glue in the bucket. And it's the same in the sewer manholes, drain manholes, catch basins, and the pipes. So that we've done tremendous amount. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're doing more, did more today, and we're doing more tomorrow. We did some property assistance with 2 houses that were impacted. And we've been in communications with them daily to assist them and get them in the right direction to help them out. Roadway grading and putting down the bituminous binder was done on Friday last week. So within less than 4 days of the time of the break, the road was bindered, except for a small section where we have that temporary water connection to the main. Green Street now has 2 lanes of traffic. It's had that since Friday. Final paving will probably take place this week. We're still trying to confirm that. If not, it will, and a lot of it will depend on the main bacteria, for the water main, the bacteria test for that main, which we're waiting to get results on. So what was accomplished was the installation of 200 feet of main, the 3 services for water, 3 services for sewer, a 16-inch line gate, and also a hydrant connection down the bottom. What caused the break? Really unknown. One thing I can tell you, and I've gone back through the report we did 2 years ago, and that break happened about 283 feet from where this break was. There's different types of corrosion. Some corrosion thins the wall of pipes, and then there's a corrosion, this is a cast iron pipe, that's called graphitization corrosion. Graphitization corrosion you can look at, I can look at, and you look at that pipe and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that pipe as from when you look at it with your eyes. Very interesting. However, when you have that type of corrosion, and it might not be through the whole pipe, it might only be through part of it, that can be impacted by another source, which would cause the break. That's generally what happens. So we look back at some of the things that might have caused this, and there are a bunch of things that will cause breaks. And there's a host from manufacturing defects to ground movement to construction, and you leave a boulder when they did it years ago. Who knows what kind of quality control they have? So if they put a boulder on top of the pipe and you get down pressure on that, that can cause that. One of the homeowners out there that's right next to the break indicated that, and asked the question, could Hallmark Health, the blasting, have caused that? And I said, I don't know. But that ledge runs all the way up from Hallmark Health and comes right up to that area. And what he indicated was that the shaking was pretty severe when he was sitting on his porch at that point. And one of the other homeowners mentioned that. So could that blasting have caused that? Could have, don't know. And what it would have done is work with the graphitization of the graphitization corrosion that's there, and would have impacted that. There's been 3 blasting occurrences for construction since 2003. One was Upland Road Extension, one was Gates of Greenwood, and the other was Hallmark Health. So Gates of Greenwood was, I believe, in 2006-07, and Hallmark Health was last October into I don't know if it went into January, but at least went through to December That-
there a fourth one?
They're not-
A small blast that actually sent the ledge across.
That goes back farther than that. I
That was
believe.
longer than that?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that goes, I think that does. I'd have to check. But you're right, there was one when they built that. Do you remember when that was?
It actually blocked the entire Main
And-
Street.
And went right out into Main Street.
Right.
And that was in that ledge. But you're right, that could be a fourth one.
It's 99.
So the other things could be possible ground movement. What would cause ground movement? Obviously, winter, freeze thaw. 2015 was a huge freeze thaw winter, to the point where MassDOT provided communities with additional money for potholes and pothole repair. The other thing, and you don't really think about it, but last year we had a very dry year, and the ground probably was shifting because of the lack of water in the ground. Now you're putting water back into the ground this year somewhat at the beginning. That's causing some shifting also. Non-uniform soil conditions, what they did years ago, what they took out, they put back in. Now we put in processed gravel and stuff like that to make it more uniform. Temperature, the water in the main heats up, cools down, can cause that. And finally, is there a pressure surge? It's interesting that this break happened 2 years from the last one, and that's the part we're going to be looking at next week, is there any pressure, something that stands out? The last time it didn't. Maybe this time when we have a comparison of the two, we'll be able to see something. Did any one of those cause this? I couldn't tell you. Did the combination of them working with the graphitization cause it? Most likely, but don't know. So what does that say about the pipe? Pipe's approximately 88 to 90 years old. It was installed between 1928 and 1930. When it was turned on, I don't know. The graphitization on this pipe was interior, not exterior. Most times on a water main, it's an exterior issue. This one's interior, which tells you that the water in the pipe back in those days was doing something to the pipe. Today, and it probably started, what, how long ago?
About 15 years.
Today, you increase pH, and the MWRA on their water actually adds a chemical to help prevent that type of corrosion and corrosion to the pipe. But obviously, there's 70 years that wasn't, or 75 years that wasn't done. The pipe that was removed, if you looked at it, you might say throw the pipe back in the hole, because it looked awful good. To the point where the contractor, in order to remove some of the pipe, wanted to crush it so that it made it easy at taking out a 21-foot piece of pipe. Could not crush that pipe in most places. It's pretty strong. And if you looked at the walls on the pipe, it's really good. Some of the things that are interesting in the report. There are no, and this is from the 3-foot section. Remember, this is a 3-foot section. This doesn't tell you about the whole piece of pipe. This is from a 3-foot section in 2015. There are no overt manufacturing or chemical deficiencies. No evidence of significant tuberculation. No significant wall thinning. Wall thickness is in agreement with ANSI and AWWA thickness for a class 56 16-inch pipe. 60% of the original pipe wall thickness is not impacted by graphitization, and that's over an average. There's a little that went up to 50, but I'm sure there's a lot that's down below that. And that's just looking at that 3-foot piece. Exterior corrosion is minimal. Hardness and choppy impact values are close to published AWWA specification values. And choppy, I believe, is sensitive to metal breaking, is what that rates. And this is an interesting one. The rupture strength values are close to that of the published value. This shows that, and I'm taking these ones out of the report, this shows that the ID corrosion in the interior did not lower the rupture strength of the pipe significantly, which indicates that even with a significant amount of corrosion, the pipe would resist rupture to a certain level. So it needed something else to impact it. And the graphite distribution is consistent with gray cast iron pipe. Two other comments which are important from the report. Estimated time until failure in the report is 140 years, and we're at 90. However, you need to consider the other influences, and that's the thing we're looking at now. We looked at before, but we're looking at again to see if we can figure anything out. And also, any impact, movement, or pressure would cause failure of the pipe when the wall is thin to about 25% of the wall thickness. And now I don't know whether that means actual thinning of the pipe or, as I mentioned, the corrosion from the graphitization, which you don't see that type of thing. But we're not even near that in either case. So we looked at, and we started back in 2016 looking at what do we do with this pipe? Well, obviously now we've replaced 200 feet, and there's about 1,150 feet of this pipe because it services our standpipe. And so just going and digging it out and replacing it is not that simple. It's a complicated process because of the standpipe and the pressure impacts taking that offline has on the system. We have done it before, but it's complicated to do. So you could replace the 16-inch pipe, which would be a nightmare and difficult. You could use, we have a 20-inch pipe that's right next to it. That 20-inch pipe was installed in 1957, and we could abandon the 16-inch main. We would have to do quite a bit of gate work and installation of some other main. Problem is that's still 1957 pipe, although it is ductile iron, not cast iron. And we really need to have a backup connecting there. The other one is we can structurally line the 16-inch main, and that's probably the one we're going to focus on. But that will require there's some testing you can do now to make sure that's going to work. And it'll actually put a liner in the pipe. And what I've been told, and we have not used the process, so I don't know, you could actually remove, when you're done, the old pipe, and that liner would work. But we'll look at lining that pipe and what that costs. But I looked at what it would cost to replace the remaining 950 feet. And this is probably an extremely low estimate based on some rough numbers we did. And it's estimated that that 950 feet would be at least $750,000, if not more, most likely more. And you have complications because of the standpipe, the ledge, and other factors. The other issue, and I bring it up every year, about where our reserve should be for water. So right now our reserve is $194,000. Okay, there is no money to do that type of project unless we borrow. Or for that matter, to continue with our water main replacement program. So in order to do that particular project, if we were to fund that as a warrant article that didn't have borrowing to it, that would increase the rate about 98 cents for that one project on water. That would be a huge amount of money. But and a lot of the, over the years, since 1992, we've done probably 95 streets to 100 streets that we've replaced water mains on. And we had a very progressive replacement program. That's been slowed over since probably 2001. And the reason that's been slowed is we built a brand-new treatment plant. We built 2 booster stations, which were required by DEP, that have been in our water study for a number of years. They were very expensive to increase pressure where it should be in 2 areas. We did some work with Stoneham to provide the 3rd area with proper pressure over for Spring Street. We also have implemented a hydrant replacement program that we've been ongoing, and we have implemented a meter replacement program. All of those, the debt on the water division is up around $450,000 each year. At some point, we're going to come back with a recommendation on what to do and figure out what the best approach is for this main, but all the other mains. The debt will start falling off in a few years, and I believe in might be 4 years it starts to drop. Let me see, and I can tell you. I believe the first one starts to drop in 3 years, and it goes up to about 5 years, and all of our debt for water for those projects are gone. Okay, so with that, any questions you have? Steve, do you want to add anything?
No, that pretty much covers
it. Well, I can't. I mean, he did a great job, and I got to give him a, pat on the back every now and then, and he deserves it because it was a tough night.
Mr. Mayor, that was quite a night and a couple days you folks had. You did a great job. I drive through there every day, so it's a little easier to drive through than to repair. What do you think with the declaration of emergency repair for the public, what are the costs then for, and this is a major emergency, it had to be resolved, and I think you guys did a great job, but just what kind of costs then for the emergency repair for the Green Street, Main Street area? What is that coming to? I mean, you probably have
At this point, I don't know.
Okay.
I can tell you the last time, but it was up farther and did much more damage.
Okay.
Was around $150,000.
Okay.
So we're looking, what we did the last time and now, we're looking at our budget to see what we can handle.
Right.
And then we'll kind of address.
And that was
the rest
that was
from
2
there.
years prior, right?
2
For
years
the same,
prior,
the
yeah.
one you're thinking similar costs, or maybe.
Right. I think it'll be lower than that. I just don't know. This was a little more involved because we replaced 200 feet
Right.
of main, which because we didn't know if there was something else going on there. So we turned around and replaced that before we fixed the break up farther.
Right, and just my own edification, I don't have a contracting license of any type, but, so the equipment you needed was probably the equipment you only find by special contractors to fix this. We couldn't do any near that.
It's not necessarily, well, the jet Vector trucks,
Right.
we don't have any of.
Okay.
But the heavy excavators, we don't have either.
Right.
We have a small excavator, but it was nowhere near able to handle this job. And you couldn't do it with a backhoe or
Right, it was a
that type
massive
of
job.
thing.
You had no other alternative
No,
to
and
call.
you needed also their triaxles in order to haul a lot of that stuff out. I mean, we actually worked with them to haul gravel in and haul hot top away. And I went up to the operator of their excavator and said, go easy on my trucks because I only have 6-wheelers. So, I mean, when he drops that in, you're hoping you're not going to lose a truck.
Right.
So
roughly, it's too hard to tell exactly what the cost will be, but obviously you had to do it, and you had to use the outside contractor.
Yep, and I'll know probably in another week or two what that total is, and then we'll start to factor it all in.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Long.
So it was $150,000 for the last break.
Right.
We shelled out another $100,000 in legal fees to fix it. Make those. Yep.
Yes.
This project this break comes in, let's say, maybe another $150,000. Going forward, how do we stop this? Especially, I mean, the people, in Greenwood, the people of Green Street are just,
Yeah.
I don't want to even say they're tired of this. They're done.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of water breaks in town, first of all. We have about 15 a year. Unfortunately, these ones are
Catastrophic.
huge. Yeah. I need a water replacement program for mains. That's going to cost money. I come in every year with a water rate, and I get beat up because it's too high. I can't do it without money.
The water rate is,
Okay.
but the MWR is holding us hostage because we do such a.
But I
pretty
can't
decent
fix
job.
mains without the proper funding.
It's not even fixed. How do we detect? Is there a detection system that we can know?
We
that these
do
are-
leak detection annually. And so we go through the whole town doing leak detection. And any break that we find, we fix immediately. Some of them you don't find. Remember, we don't know what caused this. There may not have been a leak. It might have just burst at that point. So it might not have been leaking because nothing was showing above ground. And a lot of times that's the case. It won't show above ground. So leak detection will tell you this year's leak detection came up with nothing on that street.
Ed?
So what was ultimately determined to be the cause of the incident 2 years ago?
Well, it's graphitization, but there's an outside force. We don't know what that outside force was. So graphitization on its own didn't cause that. Graphitization is here. Do you have the piece of pipe, Steve?
Yes, I do.
And you can see, you look at this piece of pipe, and this just came out of where the break was this time. It looks like brand new. Okay, you can see the wall thickness is pretty much where it was when it went in the ground. And remember, you can't look at this until it breaks, unfortunately. But you will see here, and this is very minor, that's some of the graphitization, that change in color there a little bit. But the pipe's still intact, it's strong, and they couldn't break it with their excavator to try to pull it out. So was it a segment of the pipe? Is it all the pipe? We don't know. We think it's probably a segment of the pipe. It's happened in a few areas. But unless you get it out of the ground, you can't tell.
I think on that, the break from 2 years ago and the break just recent this month, they were, what, about 200 feet apart?
283 feet apart.
So can you understand or appreciate why people would be losing confidence in the reliability of the systems here when you have within 2 years?
I absolutely understand, and I think our systems across the U.S., there's probably 240,000, from what I've read, main breaks a year because the system's old. And in order to replace that or rebuild that, you need the funding to do that. We've been strapped with funding, and we've been strapped for the past 15 years with funding.
But I think I hear that, but in the same vein, you're presenting a pipe here and saying that everything looks good and that it shouldn't have broken. And so
and the report says it's good too.
Yeah, so I guess that's where I have a little bit of the concern in that. You're sitting here tonight, you can't say, yeah, this is exactly what happened, or this is what caused it. We're saying, look at this corroded pipe, this is why we're having this. So, it gives me pause to say.
The corrosion is actually internal it's not something you can see.
Right, but we can see this here, and you're looking at this, and you're saying that should hold up, but
Right.
it obviously didn't, back early this month.
Yeah.
And so it feels like there has to be some better way of being able to make these determinations or assessments, because it's not a coincidence that less than 300 feet away we had two major pipes burst within a 2-year period, almost on the anniversary of the first.
Yeah, and there's no way to pinpoint what caused it. Okay, was it the blasting? Was it ground movement? If I could answer that, I would probably be the richest person in the world because I'd be traveling all over the country.
Just one other question on that too. I realize that you said you had to bring in emergency contractors, so I understand it doesn't go through the regular bidding process.
Yep.
How are those contractors that are exempted from the bidding process and selected? How are they coming into the mix?
When we have an emergency, We call. There's no selection process. You call. You don't wait to, if I was to wait, it'd probably take 2 days before I had someone else.
I guess what I'm asking is, how do you determine who your first call is in that instance?
We call ones that we have worked with that specialize in those types of breaks. And this company specializes in that. They specialize on emergencies. And that's why we called them. We know they have the equipment, and we're able to utilize them for it. So
So is there some sort of kind of ranking then, that this is my first call, this is my second call, this is my third, and how, if at all, does cost
we would
factor
go
into
down.
that?
We have a list of a lot of contractors. We would go down that list, but we try to go with the one we know that's going to show up. We don't want to waste time.
Ian, you had a question?
Rick, it's my understanding that when 2 years ago, you look at the pipes in either direction, and I'm talking, having no clue what I'm really talking about. But, so you look just to make sure that the pipes are strong and sturdy,
Yep.
and my understanding is there's nothing that told you that this other break was imminent.
Correct.
And what I'm learning today is, across the country, infrastructure-wise, that's probably the case. If pipes were to be replaced now, are they replaced, is it different material that's used that tamps down the graphitization, or?
Today you install cement line ductile on a
Okay.
pipe, but you also, when you install a pipe into a trench today, you're using more processed
It's just
gravel
different, okay.
than you are dumping what was there before with all the boulders and everything back in.
So, and I know when it was replaced 2 years ago, cameras were used to look down a certain amount to make sure that, okay, that looks right. And what I'm hearing now is there's just no way to tell, and it sounds like it's cost prohibitive to replace. The way we can do it to prevent, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's not cost-wise when you look at a water main project. $750,000, $1 million for that's not a lot of money,
Right.
but you got to have the money
Yeah.
to do that. Yeah.
Okay. And did you go further in? Do you typically replace like that, the 250 feet?
We would
Or
not. Normally,
so you went
we-
further because of the area?
The only reason we could this time was because we weren't sure what was
Right.
happening. But in an emergency situation, I'm supposed to turn around and fix the emergency, and that's where it stops. This time we did more because we didn't know if something else had happened that we couldn't see.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Steve the next morning, and I, like Peter, drive down there, and I can't imagine the residents going through it again, but I also, you hear nonsense out there on the street and online that's just wrong, and I think it sounds like you've done everything within the means that we have at this point to protect the pipe going forward. I think we need to decide if we need to put a lot more money into fixing these.
So, Rick, a couple of questions. Standard, the I&I that we do, that we get from development, you use most of that to do videoing of all the pipes, correct?
That's for sewer.
Or just sewer?
Yeah, there is a process that's very expensive where you can video water main. It's kind of new. We have not done that.
Okay.
But that II money is for sewer main, which you can video at any time.
So historically, over the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, if you go back in time, your largest increase right now over the last 4 years was back in 2015 with the 1.2 million, but that was with assistance from the state for potholes, correct?
You're talking Chapter 90, which
Chapter
has
90?
nothing to do with.
But I know it doesn't, but
Right.
my point is, right now, we are doing due diligence on doing road repair work. And then if there's a case where we are going into the road, electric company puts it in, the water department will go in and do an assessment of that area too and make any repairs at that
Yeah,
time.
we go through on any roadway work, and we will TV the sewer lines, we TV the drain lines, and we'll do repair, dig fixes. There's other stuff, and you'll see us around town. Now, we're doing $900,000 worth of sewer work that did not require digging, and you can do that after you pave. But we'll do TV the drain, TV the sewer, do the dig fixes before we pave. The water main, we look back at break history, and we look back at we look at all the services to make sure we have no lead services there. We'll pull all those out and see if there are any other issues that we need to address.
So, was there ever an established water main replacement program?
It still is. It's
And
been
how-
there since 1992.
So and how much is appropriated on an annual basis?
We just did, there's been a number of years that there's been nothing appropriated since 2001, and that's because of the other projects. We appropriated money for Avon Street, which that cost around $450,000. This year, we were able to appropriate, I believe it was I'd have to look, 160, 180,000. That was all we could appropriate, and that's taking care of Mount Pleasant Ave, which we're going to pave as a part of a betterment next year, or in the spring. So we're actually doing that water main right now.
So if we were, as a community, to really consider going into a program, what would be a workable number that you would need to move forward with a replacement plan? And how do you make that determination if you can't inspect the pipes?
Based on our water study, we have a whole list of recommendations. And they're not based on looking at pipes. They're based on, what type of material, which doesn't always tell you what you need to know. But based on type of material, based on, they'll look at age, which age isn't a good indicator either. There's a lot of pipes out there. Cast iron pipe is good for 100+ years. It all depends on the conditions that impact it. So age isn't going to tell you that. And I've read something where there's some cast iron pipe that's over 150 years that's been in existence. So there's a lot of factors you look at when you do that. To do the bigger projects costs a lot of money. So to fund $1 million would not be, when we look at Avon Street, I need to do Yale Ave, that's going to be $450,000. And a lot of times we'll take a coupon out and we'll cut a section of the main out to look at it. If we've had some history where we need to do that. But Yale Ave is going to be another $450,000. So to do $1 million is not a lot of money to go forward with that.
In regards to the actual repair work on Green Main, I mean, all departments on that 4-day period highly recommended. I mean, you guys, all of you, the police department, water, DPW, everyone did their fair share of making sure that it wasn't a long period of time and the people's needs were addressed as soon as possible. So I commend the entire group of you that had any bit of involvement in that. And I, like Mr. May, I drove by there as close as I could on a regular basis just to see the progress, and it was nonstop. So good job out there.
One thing I did want to mention was I looked at our last water study that we did, and we've chipped away a little bit, but it hasn't changed much because of the funding, but we had about 20 miles of water main to replace. And if I use a cost of $500 a foot on average, that comes out to about $52.8 million.
And how many roads are there in? How many miles of road are there in Wakefield?
There's 110 miles of road between public and private.
So I appreciate the numbers and I understand the money thing. I think all of us are asking it happened twice in a 2-year span to this neighborhood. And at whatever priority list, as you're looking to replace mains, I think Green Street jumps the line. And me hearing it's unknown what's causing it, that's concerning. And I don't want to be back here in 2 years again and have the same neighbors my neighbors in our neck of the woods. So I think I'm echoing kind of what I keep on hearing, but I'd love for you to come back and kind of have a plan and how we're going to work on how many feet it is on Green Street. Because I'm not convinced that this isn't going to happen again in 2 years.
And it's not just green, well, one, I don't know if I would recommend replacement or lining, because we're still investigating that.
Yeah, whatever the recommendation
But
is.
it's not just Green Street, because that line goes up the other way to Upland Road and up to the standpipe. So you would do that whole piece.
And you had another question?
There's a question. After the to understand the water main replacement program, after the 2015 incident, did this stretch of pipe jump the line at all? Or was
Not
it
based
even,
on,
even the radar?
let me remember what the report said. Estimated time until failure in the report was 140 years. And any impact, movement, or pressure would cause failure of the pipe when the wall is thinned to about 25%. So no, it did not.
So, I guess maybe the methodology just kind of concerns me a little bit then, because you had this pipe less than 300 feet down, tested 2 years ago, and you're told that it should last without incident for another approximately 50 years, and then almost 2 years to the day, you have another section of it
But
burst.
remember, they don't know, and we don't either, what the other sources are caused, what impact is caused there, okay? The other thing too is they're looking at a 3-foot section of pipe, okay? There's 1,150 feet of pipe, okay? So when you only look at 3 feet, that's telling you one thing. You don't know what the rest of the story is unless you can look at that. And the only way you can look at that is to dig it all out of the ground to look at that and analyze that.
I mean, can we analyze it in other ways, like say the external factors of the pipe, perhaps not the pipe itself, but say and again, I'm not an expert in this, but say what kind of pressure the ground can take, for example. Is that an issue? Is there something in terms of like the soil or the gravel that's surrounding the pipes that could be problematic? I mean, there's something that's not right here.
Yeah, my guess is probably the blasting, but there's also been a utility line that was installed there that could have had caused disruption within the last 2 or 3 years. I can't remember exactly.
Can we go back in a more forensic way to kind of trace it back to the blasting, for example? I mean, if you have these first-hand accounts of people saying
that
shaking.
I have to talk to our water consultant and see, to find out if there's anything else we can do. Do you know of anything?
No, I don't, but I think that very few towns or cities go into as much detail as Rick has gone into in trying to find the problems with that. Very few people send out the pipes to have them all tested. The reports that we've gotten back, and if you listen to the different water main breaks that you see on TV in other towns, you'll always hear people asking, why did that break? What happened? And you'll never hear them answer that definitively, because there's too many factors that are involved that could cause that to happen.
It just seems like we have to be able to somehow determine a way that we can more efficiently get to a root cause, or at least have a better understanding, because, I mean, we're just throwing good money over bad on this issue. I mean, this is kind of shrouded in mystery, what's happened to this stretch of pipe. Clearly there's something wrong if it's happened twice. I mean, are there other companies or other testing that can be done, perhaps?
I have to research that more. I couldn't tell you.
I'm just very dissatisfied with the unsettled feeling I think we probably all have as a board, with not really knowing what has happened and whether it can happen again.
You don't know how unsettled I am, so, because we don't want this to happen, and knowing the answer, as I said when I emailed you before, we probably will never know, okay? Because there are factors that you don't know what's happening. And you may test today on ground movement and it's not moving, and you may test 3 weeks from now and it moves. You have to be there at the right time on the right circumstances. You may never have an answer. Okay? And so to say that there's a way to do it, not necessarily.
I know.
We wish things were that cut and dry.
Tony, you had another question?
Yeah, just really quick. You say you do leak testing.
Every year.
Can we put this neighborhood on a more frequent schedule for leak testing?
We don't believe this was caused by a leak. This was caused by something else that caused it to burst. It could have been pressure in the pipe, and then it burst. Leak detection on this main here isn't going to help you at all. By the time that breaks, it just bursts because of the size of the pipe.
And the last question.
But it's leak tested every year.
Last question. The two houses that were impacted, what was the damage?
I don't know. They're still evaluating it. It goes through the same process as all of them. They go to their insurance company. They'll write a letter to the town clerk. Goes from there. We're working with them on some of the exterior things that we can help them repair. And so when you make the vote on the emergency tool, you should also vote to allow us to assist them with the exterior repairs.
Rick, I have one last question, then I'm going to ask for a vote on the declaration of emergency repair. How far up from the intersection of Green Street and Main was the original break 2 years ago? The actual break now, not what the repair was, what the actual break was.
2 years ago was from Green Street, up from the intersection of Green and Main was about 583 to 600 feet.
And how much of the actual pipe was damaged?
Oh, do you remember?
Yeah, I think how much did they replace?
Yeah, well, how much was the actual, right, how much was the replacement?
I think they replaced maybe one section, 20 feet.
20 feet, so 20 feet second. Now, this second break that occurred 2 years later was how far away from that first break?
283 feet.
283 feet.
Yeah.
And how many sections of pipe is that?
Well, it's not.
Roughly?
Yeah.
If they're 20 feet long, so what are you looking at? Probably 10 to 12 sections?
14 sections.
14 sections, okay.
No, more than that, actually.
Probably more than that, right. It'd be more than that because you're talking 20, right? No,
Right.
probably not that, about 20 sections. So I agree with that we need to do some more work as far as trying to stay ahead of it and make sure that these, but when you're dealing with large lengths, I mean, if you can't put any camera into the pipe, and you're not going to just dig up the street just to look at every pipe in the town. There has to be something that we can do to check the water mains.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we're going to look forward to seeing what you recommend to this board.
Yeah. Well, one will be to fund a decent program, but two will be, there is a new approach out there for looking at mains. We don't know enough about it. We need to investigate that. Don't have any clue what the cost is that goes with it. And so we've been looking at that. And we started looking at and reviewing the options when we got the report, so late 2016, and that was only a little more than a year ago that we actually started looking at what our options are with this main, so.
Appreciate that. I'll entertain a motion, though. We need a motion right now to authorize the declaration of emergency repair from this board.
And the assistance of the exterior exterior repairs.
I move that we authorize the emergency declaration and give you authorization to assist with exterior assistance to those homes that were,
Yeah.
you deem.
Right, on private property.
On private property.
We have a motion seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
for your explanation on Green and Main. You are also here to have a declaration of emergency repair for the Dolbear boiler.
Yes.
I'm okay.
Okay, no, sir, thank you.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, anybody want this paperwork?
Thank you.
Make some nice.
Nice paperwork.
Yeah, thank you, Fitz.
Thank you.
The Dolbear boiler, and We put a pretty comprehensive capital plan together every year that usually comes out to around $7.5 million that we forward to the capital planning committee. We've been funding, which has been great because it's increased substantially through the town administrator's efforts. We've gone from, I believe, $300,000 one year, we're up to $2.1 million now. Unfortunately, not everything gets covered. And one of the things that was cut from last year's listing was the boiler at the Dalby. We were hoping that as they were making cuts, the question was asked, will it last another year? We thought we could keep it running. And it would last. Unfortunately, it did not. We had the state inspector out in late July, I believe it was late July, mid-July, late July, and that boiler did not pass. It is we've always had 2 boilers in each building. The other one was not working. We were trying to get by with the one boiler, so it didn't pass. So we had to replace that. Why didn't we go out to bid? Number of reasons. One being that in order to put plans and specs together, go out to bid, evaluate the bids, and do the review of all the shop drawings would place us into probably December. So this needed to, in the order time too, it takes a while to order these. So we went the emergency approach in order to expedite this. I believe it was about 6 weeks, the process for the, just to get the boiler. The boiler's being installed this week, and will be up and running by the weekend. We hope, unless something else came up during the course of the year, we've shifted all of the things. If you remember, we put 100 and I believe it was 125,000 in general heating repairs. We're going to use that money to replace this boiler. And hope that nothing else comes up during the course of the year. The contractor we're using actually is on the state bid list, but the way that state bid list works, there's a number of steps you have to use and go through, which we didn't have time to do. So that's why this is an emergency. It's one of the items that was cut, unfortunately.
Thank you, Mr. Stinson. We have a motion to authorize the declaration of emergency repair for the Dolby boiler.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
A few questions. One is, how is something deemed to be an emergency? I understand obviously the water main break is an obvious one.
Yeah.
But where did the lines become blurred between emergency and
We could
expedite?
not get this boiler in and online before heating season for schools. So we would have been into December with no heat.
And then the other question is, how was this contractor specifically selected?
The state selected this contractor as part of their bids, and we selected him off of that bid list.
So you were saying that this contractor is an approved or authorized
He's
bid
approved
contractor
with
of the
limits.
state?
This goes a little beyond those limits, so that's why we need to do the emergency declaration.
But like choosing this one versus another that's on that same list, how is that determination made?
We talked to 2 or 3 of them at the time. We went with the one that we could get it done the quickest. So.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, aye. That's an aye.
Mr. Stinson, thank you very much.
Did you have other questions, or are you all set? I know you asked something on paving.
Originally on the paving issue, if you don't mind, just 2 seconds of the time. When you get your Chapter 90 monies, for the last 5 years, we've only appropriated $200,000 additional. So over the course of the last 7 years, you've had 680, 680, 670, 880, 880, 870, 1.26, 880 again. So you've been roughly around $890,000 a year for Chapter 90 for actual repairing of roads. A lot of comments have been coming out lately, and of course, you hear them. You have to take some with a grain of salt. But do you utilize all of the money that we allocate for you, and is it enough?
First one, we do use all the money. Second one, no, it's not enough. As I tell in Finance Committee, when Ed was there, and I've told this board every year, we need to replace or repair or rebuild 6 miles of road every year to stay even. That's 6 miles of road in today's dollars is $2.1 million. So this year's funding is $871,000. And when you look back at all the years, we were at one point down to $173,000 in 2002. Okay, and obviously it wasn't 2.1 million then, but it was still over $1 million, and it was at 300-something thousand. Years ago, before 1995, Chapter 90 funding would provide for that 6 miles, and then the state started cutting back. And in 2012, we began appropriating $200,000 a year. So the only year that's the odd year is in 2015. That's when the state gave us additional money because of the freeze-thaw effect and the potholes that were created. They added money to that. That was a one-time thing. So basically, we're running on $680,000 or $880,000, and we need $2.1 million. We have in the way the Chapter 90 process works, we have to put a request together. It's only for public roads. That request is signed by myself, my business operations manager, and the town accountant. That goes to the state, who has to approve that. If they don't approve it, the project doesn't go forward. Then when we file for reimbursement requests, we do the same thing. We have to send in a request for reimbursement. As of right now, all of our funding, and that includes FY18, the top line, which was $671,000, is all committed, and will, including the town money, and will be expended. Some projects may take a little longer, but most of it will be expended by June 30 of 2019.
So it all comes out to extra money.
2018, I'm sorry.
It all comes out to extra money for water repair,
Extra money.
and water mains, and
Right.
road
Yep.
repair. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Let's move on, ladies and gentlemen, to our next presentation. We have the Boys and Girls Club up next. Welcome, Ryan. Adam. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's right. I know I'm not as pretty as Anthony. So,
Yeah,
you know,
well.
it's,
Nobody is.
he'll watch this later.
I know you are.
Just asking Anthony.
I heard he's flower picking out in.
Yeah, he's out
country.
hiking in the mountains, so we'll see if he comes back. But thank you, everybody. Thank you for inviting us tonight. We're going into our 5th year of the Boys and Girls Club in Wakefield. We're one organization with the club in Stoneham as well, but the Wakefield Club specifically has been here almost 4.5 years, coming on through 5 years, and it's been an incredible success, incredible growth. We're located in the basement of the AmeriCal Civic Center, a little bit upstairs right now too, as well, and we use the facilities at the Civic Center. And this year, so it's a drop-in after-school program. It's our prime program, and we take kids 7 and up, and the membership for the year is $25. And then beyond that, everything that we do. So we do a lot of, homework help and the normal sports programs and everything like that. But music lessons and art classes and everything else we do there is all included in that membership fee. So it's a very affordable program. Specifically, I know we're just coming here talking publicized that we will be able to host babysitting now for town meeting, given our location, given that we're closed there. So we'll be getting the registration and the flyers and everything up and try to publicize as much as possible. But it's a free service we're offering to the community that for a little bit before and a little bit after town meeting, we'll be doing babysitting there. Again, it's a free service. We'll be doing registration and things like that ahead of time just for emergency contact information. But we'll have all that information up, and whether you're doing online registration or in paper registration, we definitely want as many people to be able to take advantage of it so that families in the community can be part of the process and not have to worry about babysitting and everything. So that's the big announcement we wanted to talk about, but then in general, just kind of give you an update. We now, with the drop-in program, when we started 5 years ago, there was maybe 30 kids a day coming to the program, which was good for the first year. We have over 130 kids coming every day and about 500 members, so about 500 kids who are signed up for the program, but about 130 of them come on a given day. So it's very, very pretty packed in the club at this point, but it's a very successful program. We also do a lot of other things through our other programs, senior programs, and other youth programs and things like that. But that was just, a little quick update on how the Boys and Girls Club is doing. We, want to say thank you to the community, where obviously $25 a year doesn't pay the bills. So it's community support, and more than about 60% of our operating, revenue comes from community support. And we've had a few. We obviously had a great event a couple weeks ago. A lot of you were there, and thank you for that. We have great support from the Wakefield Rotary Club and a lot of other Epsilon local community businesses that really support us. So I want to say thank you for that. And if I don't know, just kind of give an update, and if anybody had any questions about the babysitting or the club in general or anything.
Paul?
Yes.
I think the babysitting is a great idea. It's something we've been talking about for years since I've been on the board, and even before attending town meeting. And you're so established now, so to be able to be close and to help out is a great help for families who want to take part but can't because they have little ones at home. So I think it's great. I also was reading that the gala, and Tom had mentioned this, raised over $100,000,
yes,
which is amazing to put into such a wonderful part of our community. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Dodgeball and Eagle, is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we gonna need a police detail for this one next year.
A lot of pain takes place, but a lot of money made.
That's a great event. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Public safety building presentation. Mr. Bertram.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure. Maybe. Regarding the public safety building, as you may be aware of, or maybe not, let me just give you a brief little history. Back in 1992, a public safety building committee was created by town meeting, and at that time there was an effort to look at the feasibility and the needs of the police department, but more importantly at the fire department. At the time, the old fire station did not have significant clearance for normal hook and ladder trucks, and the floor of the where the trucks were placed was not very stable. So a new station was obviously needed. However, it took 7 to 8 years to get the financing and to get the appropriate project underway. And then by 2004, we were able to open up the new public safety building. However, I think it's very important to understand that the primary needs for the fire department, we literally fit the police department back into the old police building with even less space than they had before. As a result, and outside of the dispatch, and as indicated by discussions that were previously had, back in that period in the 1990s. The idea was to have the dispatch totally separate from any distractions whatsoever. And that was the theory behind it at that time. Boston did it that way. Everyone did it that way. That now has changed, and we need to do something with the lobby of that public safety building because for safety concerns as well. So as a result of it, in May 2016, town meeting authorized a feasibility study for the permanent building committee to look at. We met with the police chief, the fire chief, the deputy police chief, the lieutenants, almost the entire police department on their needs, requests, and what recommendations they had. By September 2016, we went out to bid for an architect to do a feasibility study, and the Permanent Building Committee selected HKT Architects. And Janet Slemenda here is from HKT, and she will show you what she found.
Good evening, everyone. Again, Janet Slemenda, I'm a principal at HKT Architects, and I'm just going to quickly go through the presentation of what we did. So we did three things. Primarily, we did a programming assessment to determine what was needed. We did some plan options to determine how we could renovate or do additions to the project, and we did a series of cost estimating to determine what any of those options would cost. From a programming point of view, we did a very thorough, comprehensive programming analysis with the police department, and the fire department. Primarily, the police department was the area that needed the most help. We did questionnaires for them. We walked through the buildings with them to discuss it. We did programming sessions, and then we did programming totals to determine what they needed. From the police department and the fire department's needs, the fire department has essentially the space they need. It doesn't mean they don't have some issues with mechanical systems, lighting, those kind of upgrades that happen over the years. It was the police department that had underutilized spaces, and that it kind of crossed almost all of the departments. Certainly there were departments or sections within the police department that were appropriately sized, but from an operational point of view, they were missing quite a few things. I'm going to show you some plans here. I figured this was the easiest way to see since you are familiar with the building. You have that red box right there is your lobby, and if you've all been in that lobby, you know it's sort of a little bit of a bowling alley, and it doesn't have any really good wayfinding. As Joe mentioned, the dispatch, which is the common point in most police stations nowadays, is not visible at all. So what you're seeing there is a small room where the records officer sits during the day. He's busy with people doing records and issues like that. And after hours, there is no one there. The fire department is in the far right side through a door to their central administrative area. So there's really no presence. And I've been there for many, many night meetings. And what happens is if someone comes in, they've got to find a telephone. And they've got to then connect with somebody up on the dispatch on the second floor, send an officer down. And the other big thing that happens, anybody who comes in to do a report or is in need, there's a counter right there, and they stand out in the open and have a conversation with the police officer. Both of those things are not terribly appropriate for policing nowadays. This is, if you all know the building, what Joe referred to as the police station is the older part of the building. That is a half a level down from the main floor, so that central spine where you enter the building, it's think of a split level building. You're always going up and down, up a half level, down a half level to get to any space in the police department. The bottom level primarily holds employee support spaces, locker rooms, their roll call room, their report writing area. All of these spaces fit into the existing building or are a bit undersized for what we need for this building going forward. On the upper level, half level up from the front door, is where that red box right there shows where the communications room, the dispatch area, and the officer in charge is. The officer in charge is tied to the dispatch area. Wherever the dispatch goes, the officer in charge goes. But that officer in charge is also involved in a lot of other operations for the department. He's also in charge of the detention area, for instance. So that person is constantly moving around the building, interacting on all the different floors with the personnel. So there's an issue of where that placement is. So it's a kind of a very busy area. It's also across the hallway from the main administrative area where the chief, the deputy chief, the lieutenants all sit and try to work and do their work. And this is the top area right here where they have the detectives sit here, and the evidence, what is highlighted in blue right there is your evidence area. And the reason I point that out to you is when an officer enters the building, he goes down to the lowest level, and that's where he does his report writing, and that's where the chain of custody starts, and then he takes that evidence and moves it up through the building. And for most police departments, that is pretty much a no-no. You really want to get the evidence into the appropriate location as soon as possible when it enters the building. So there's a real disconnect between where the officers enter and where they place the evidence. This area right here is the back area off of Crescent, which is the sally port. And when the sally port was designed, the depth of the sally port, right now they park a van in there. They put a tire against a wall because that tire protects the building from being hit. The van pretty much fills in the area. They have about a foot in front of that van to get around the vehicle. They have no place to impound vehicles. There's no way to separate. So when you impound a vehicle, you often separate that from the regular sally port, which would be a day-to-day use or an hour-to-hour use for the prisoner movement. So that area. The other red box on the lower left is an area that has been combined over a period of time to house IT and equipment, all sorts. I mean, it's wonderful that we have small computers, small phones. The back of the house support for that space has grown and grown and grown. So we're seeing more back of the house to support all of the functions, and they have simply moved in and done what they can to make that work. The other greenish blue box up there is where bicycle storage was, and that has now become their armory because their armory has now been taken over by people. So we have a constant movement of space as their needs have changed over the years. The past 14 years since the building was constructed, but almost 20 years since the programming was completed on this building. What we saw through our investigation, and I'm not going to go into, there's pages and pages of how you get to this square footage, but we did what we call a site blind analysis of the police department, in that we did not consider what they had, but asked them the appropriate questions we would do for any police department if we were designing from scratch or whatever. We do a site blind so that we're never comparing their existing spaces to what they have. And what we saw in the end was they were about 4,100 square feet short of space to be appropriately planned for their current and future operations. And so when we had that 4,100 square feet, we kind of knew what our target was. How we were going to accommodate that we weren't quite sure yet. While that was also going on, we had our mechanical, electrical, fire protection, and structural engineers in to look at the building. So there was a total assessment of the buildings. The structural engineer looked at the general condition of the building, and she was responsible also for trying to answer the requests of the committee. Where could we put an addition if we need it? How could we correct internal issues in the garage space? Could we build over the old police station, which originally had a flat floor, or a flat roof, and now has a gable roof? All those kind of things. So she was answering general assessment and then looking for specific responses. In the end, if the building code is quite complicated when you have an existing building, but the end result was that the best way to do any addition, if that was the decision of the committee and the town, would be do a horizontal addition to the building, which would be substantially structurally separate, as opposed to building on top. All the options to build on top would require substantial retrofitting of the internal structural system of the building. Not really appropriate for this building. We also looked at some areas. Could we build mezzanine spaces in the fire department? Could we build over the newer portions of the building? And we found that the newer portions of the building didn't have any residual capacity to take additional loads. Our mechanical and mechanical engineers, including their electrical, fire protection, plumbing systems, they looked at all of them. They are in fair to good condition. The one item that is most in need of attention are your mechanical systems. They, at 14 years old, they are nearing the end of their expected service life. You could do things to upgrade the building, new lighting, LED lighting. You could do things to improve your systems generally through the building, but if you did nothing, you would get more years out of that without difficulty, except you would be planning on replacing those mechanical systems down the road. There are cross ventilation issues in the building. When the fire department is cooking, the police department know what they're cooking, and travels through the building. That's not really very good. And there are some plumbing issues, but those are repair issues that would be done in any case. So we looked at 3 levels of renovation. One was simply moving the dispatch to the first floor and retrofitting that space. The second one was moving that to the first floor and doing more work to organize the building, suggested additions. And the third option was give them the spaces they need going forward the next 20 to 30 years, that 4,000 square foot of space that I talked about at the beginning. This is the option that we looked at. I don't know how many options we looked at. There were something like 6 different lobby first floor spaces. We looked at 5 different options for the second floor. We looked at each of the component pieces first. We put the best of those options together. So what you're seeing here is taking where you come in right now as an entry and creating the new records area in that space and creating a new entry simply to the right of that, which is essentially south of the new entry. And in that new lobby space, we would create a entry point for the communications dispatch room. We would create a new entry for the fire department and a new, when I mean entry is a service point, and a new place for the records. So off of that main lobby would be those 3 major departments that use that space right now. They would be the fire department, and the records would continue to be a 9 to 5 kind of, or actually to 4 operation, and the dispatch would be the 24/7. So every time a person was in need, there would be a body on that floor and available to talk to. The other thing we did was plan for this yellow box over here is an addition on the front of the building. It's approximately 14 feet wide by about 76 feet long. It basically infills from the corner of the edge of the existing police station up to the new entry, and we did that on 3 floors. And what that allowed us to do for the police department is correct their operational issues. We reshuffled space floor to floor to make it work better for them. We created good working zones for the evidence processing, for dispatch, for the roll call rooms, training spaces. Every component piece for the police station was accommodated in these additions. This is a little larger. You can see it here. That is the new evidence area. That's the new fire department block. This is records, and that yellow block there from the lobby is the lobby, and that box behind it is now the dispatch. The big common meeting room still exists there, and that's to the right. So that's right here to the right. So what we looked at that was that plan. This is the next level up. The box in the rear is the small addition for the Sally Port to give it some more depth, so that they could at least get out of their vehicles and move around. And then on the second floor, we provided a block of offices. These offices here are clinician and family service. The police department has changed their mission through the years. They are the only group in town that's open 24/7, and they also deal with a lot more social issues, family issues than they ever have before, so providing the appropriate space for them. We also gave them appropriate roll call room, appropriate spaces for their sergeants, things that they haven't had because the building is essentially too small. There's the Sally Port in the back. We also made a proper armory back here, making it safer. And this is the top-level addition. And in the top level, what we were doing is we moved the administration people to the third floor, and so that they had appropriate workspaces and perfect meeting spaces. And we had essentially 2 rooms for the future, because we do know policing has changed. That's essentially what it would look like. That's the addition. We would match all the brickwork, match all the window patterns, match all the precast structure, so it looks pretty much exactly what you see right now, except it's brought forward, and the rear of the sally port is essentially the same. Again, same with all the same materials, just bringing it forward 10 feet in the rear, 14 feet in the front. The cost for that is we had an independent cost estimator who did a detailed cost estimate of this. There are 2 categories, I'm sure you know, of costs. There are hard construction costs, which include all the contingencies and escalations that are appropriate for a building this size, and then all the associated soft costs that it takes to build a building, including design fees, the owner's project management fees, legal fees, testing during construction, commissioning, utility movement, all those things. And in this particular case, some phasing costs, because the police and fire department would be remaining functional in this building during construction. The total number that for starting in the spring of 2019 for the construction bid, that's a year and a half from now, is estimated to cost $7.7 million. And that would take you, those costs would, you estimate in construction to the midpoint of construction. So if we bid in 2019, we're talking about construction value in 9 months after that. And so we were talking about a point in early 2020 with construction complete towards the end of 2020 or early 2021. And that's it. Thank you.
If there are any questions, we'd be glad to answer them. The chiefs are here. Chip Tarbell, also from the Permanent Building Committee, is present as well. We also suggested, the committee suggests that the Board of Selectmen, as well as the Finance Committee, have a tour of the building to get a better understanding of what we're talking about. It's nice and easy to look at a little chart, but, you know, they actually see the real thing. Except maybe the jail cells you may not want to be in too long. But to go there and to see exactly what we're talking about, we also think it would be appropriate to have public tours as well. Thank you.
So I had a very extensive tour about...
Yes, we know you did.
Right.
Yes.
And, you know, looking at it from my background of being a prosecutor for a long time and being in so many police departments and working in evidence rooms and seeing these kinds of rooms, I was shocked at how ineffective the police department was. And I know there's a history. We have a permanent building committee now, one committee that oversees all kinds of projects. We did not have that when this was built. And,
no.
Right. And that might have created some of the push and pull. But I was really shocked at very much how ineffective, like where the evidence was stored. And nothing against Chief Smith, absolutely not. You're not ineffective. Just that the building itself doesn't lend itself to interview a victim of domestic violence and have a family.
Well, you may remember, as I indicated, back in the 1990s, there was no the social issues that weren't there and weren't kind of as prevalent as they are now. And it's those needs that the police department has now that have changed so dramatically in the last 15 to 20 years.
In the dispatch area, Phyllis Hull has always been complaining about that, very rightfully so, that you walk in there and if you're in a crisis, you are absolutely by yourself, that dispatch area. And I think this is needed. I think public need to go see it, though, because if we're ever going to push this, asking people for this kind of money is difficult. But I was very surprised when I saw it. And again, not condemning anyone, but it's
That's all right. I was the chairman of the prior Public Safety Building Committee, so you can condemn me all you want.
No, I'm not condemning you, but even from a law enforcement background, there were things that just didn't make sense. And I think we would do it very differently now. what you put together is excellent, so thank you very much. And knowing that police are asked to do different things now.
Yeah.
They are social workers, they deal with drugs, people who are, overdosing. It is a different type of job than it was 20 years ago, so.
I can assure you, but having been the prior chairman, it was a whole different world.
Sure.
Totally different world
Yeah.
than it was, than it is now,
Yeah.
unfortunately, in many ways.
Tony?
Joe and Gina, thank you for your time and your presentation. I'm not going to believe that the project needs to be done or not needs to be done. We all know it needs to be done. Why wouldn't we go to bid in 2018 and save the taxpayers $600,000?
Well, the first thing you would have to do it in 2018, you would have to have this in front of town meeting in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. That's just not feasible. The next town meeting is in May, so we project in discussions with Steve that we would present a May town meeting in 2018. Once you then get that, as we know experience-wise, to get the bids out, to get the final design documents, to do all the various retention of architects, engineers, et cetera, that takes time. And that's why we put down those numbers as they are. We ask for those numbers because that's a more realistic beginning construction date.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, just so I have a quick visual on this myself, right now, if I'm looking at the front of the building,
Yep.
the new addition is going to mirror what we see on the right?
Correct.
So you're going to be raising the roof line as well, too, on the left-hand side?
We would bring it out on the left side, so the addition would be from the roof down. We have to put a flat roof on that because we can't really we can't put any additional loads on that gable. That gable is.
So the new building, though, will be higher than the existing roof line?
It will go in
No,
the
it'd be to it.
forward. Yeah, we have a. Let me go back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Would go to it.
Oh, I get you.
Go right
And
to
then
it.
it's a flat roof over the new addition part.
I'm seeing that as two stories compared to the other side where I'm actually seeing three.
Yeah, it is
Correct.
three. We're putting below grade. We'd be putting all the evidence. It's a better location for the
Okay.
police to go
So
to.
I'm just only going by the visual, I'm saying it doesn't match.
Yeah.
So you're going with the flat roof to the gutter line
Correct.
Correct.
and then going down into the ground.
Correct.
I got you.
That's
Thank you.
basically the elevation of the original roof.
Now I understand. Okay, thank you. Ed?
I guess I have some hesitation about the structural assessment. I know that this building, or this, I'll call this new building, which is completed in 2004, so we're only talking about 13 years, and I'm hearing that, a lot of the mechanical elements are at the end of their expected service life. And I know that there have been a lot of issues in that building at present. I know there are issues with windows, for example. I think there are other systems issues that have come up, and for a project that to me seems relatively young, I'm really troubled that there have been so many issues thus far, and what can be done or what is intended to be done differently so that 13 years from this project's completion, we're not seeing the same thing where, climate control involves trying to open a window that may or may not open, and, I know that there's a quality of life issue for those inhabitants there currently. So what's going to be done differently? And I guess also looking back, what can we learn from what had been done previously so that we don't make those same mistakes again?
We were not involved in that project, so I'm only guessing what happened back then.
But you've seen, though, you've observed these issues and heard of these issues, I
I know they had
assume?
window issues, and they were corrected. These small hairline cracks on the inside of the building are not related. There are no structural failures. That's the first thing the structural engineer looked at to see that if there were any big settlement issues, anything like that. We believe that some of those issues are related to simply the construction of it. A little bit construction, perhaps. It's hard to tell, quality control. But the building is very safe. There's no possibility of it falling down. As for the mechanical issues, why the odors go from one side of the building to the other, why there's hot water flowing in urinals, I'm not really sure about that, how that happened. Sometimes the piping just got reversed. I think we would be very, very, personally, our firm takes a great deal of pride in how we put our drawings together and the quality control through the design period, and then hopefully during construction, we have the same level of control of the project. We're doing the shop drawings, watching how the project is constructed. And I think that's the best way, is a tight set of drawings, a good bid process, and a thorough review. There's also owner's project managers now required under Massachusetts public construction law. Those probably weren't required then, and so that's your another set of eyes that's required as part of this project. So you will have that series of eyes, and towns, many different towns use OPMs in different ways. Sometimes they use a member of their own professional staff to do that. Most times go outside for OPM services, and they also provide the clerk of the works, and so there's some seamless through the design, through the construction process. So there's many things that can put in place to help with that quality control.
I mean, can we acknowledge, though, that the work was subpar in looking at this? I mean, 13 years in? You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
So you think that 13 years in, the kind of issues that this building has had are to be expected?
No, the issues that we're talking about are space
Operational.
or operational.
I'm
We're not talking about.
I'm not focused on
this
this.
building is not in any subpar shape. We're talking about operational needs that the police department have now that was not there in the 1990s.
Right, correct. The mechanical systems, they need to be replaced in a period of time.
I mean, in 13 years, and the windows...
20, well, it'll be about, if you think about it, by the time this project would be on board, it'd be about 20 years. So when we did our estimate, we did it as keeping the mechanical systems in place, and then, removing them and replacing them. And at 20 years, it would be an important thing to replace them. They're also in very challenging locations. They sit between on-roof lines, behind parapets, in challenging locations to replace. You'd be correcting the ductwork issues where there are cross-ventilation issues, and because you'd be extending out the mechanical systems to take on the additions, so this is the time to replace them. So,
I know, like the holding cells, I remember at Finance Committee, we dealt with the issue of the holding cells, and there were problems there, and there were some really serious issues that we had to deal with. Steve, I think, it was $8,000 something.
Yeah, I disagree. I don't think it was the best built building in the world.
Yeah, I mean, because
spade to spade.
I've heard too many reports of there being too many issues in that building in a very young building.
Absolutely.
And what I'm saying is, I'm not looking to place the blame on what happened, but I'm saying, what are we going to do this time around so we're not going to have those issues again with this new construction?
Yeah, I think, if I can, Mr. Chairman, our whole process now is very different about how we approach building projects. We have a permanent building committee of experts that really have done a fabulous job on Galvin. You can see the work they're doing on Walton. I think that we have a better understanding. We're better about it. I think the OPM, the owner's project manager, makes a great difference. I think we also have a very committed police chief this time around to make sure that the police side of the house is taken care of. And the police department was really shoehorned into the old part of the building. I mean, hindsight being 20/20, with policing changing, is something we need to do. And so that's why I'm confident that it's going to be.
It's a great
question.
Point, Steve. I just want to acknowledge there were some serious flaws with that building last time around. So let's all put that on the table and say, okay, going forward, understand that the charge is to make sure that we don't have those same mistakes made a second time.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm asking for, in this project going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board?
Did you want me to read the chiefs?
Chief 1 and Chief 2, anybody, either one of you would like to step up and say anything at this point?
Yeah, you know me, I can't hold my tongue. I have to agree, I have to disagree, and I have to agree with Mr. Dombrowski as well as Steve Mayo. There are issues in that building, and I've been in that building 13 years, and it's as simple as bad sheetrock. We have leaks in the roof. We have electrical equipment, radio equipment that's damaged and needs to be repaired because of leaks in the roof. We have cell blocks that we've had issues with cameras, which expose us to huge liability with prisoners.
Sprinklers?
and suicide.
Sprinklers?
Sprinklers.
Yep.
Sprinklers, they keep going off. We have to take cells out of service. We have 3 boilers in that building. At one point last year, we're down to 1. We have had problems with the generator, where I couldn't get the generator service up until, I don't know, was it a hurricane or a snowstorm, Chief? We had something was coming, and our generator, we didn't know at that point, we didn't know up until the day before the storm that generator was gonna trip over, if it should. We hadn't had a load test done on it. So, I mean, I want to applaud the work that's been done here to get to this point, but of everybody in this room, I'm the guy that's been living in that building for 13 years, and I've seen the deficiencies in that building, and that's how we got to be here. I have to say that the plan that was shown to us tonight is an incredible plan. There's an incredible amount of work that's been done. It's incredible. There's a lot of foresight there. That building will not make another 10 or 15 years, so why we should be looking at it right now. Somebody in the room said policing has changed. We have no services. We can't provide the services that we should be providing because, as Mr. Mayo said, we're shoehorned into that building. To me, and I've said this a million times in this room, the police department is your insurance policy. If we make a mistake, somebody hangs in our cell, somebody walks into that room, that reception area, it's going to cost you $8 million to get out of it. It's that simple. Because the civil suit we cannot defend because people have known for 13 years that building has been deficient. So I applaud that we're looking forward and we're looking at this and we're hopefully going to get it done. I will never see it, so it's not about me trying to find a nice office for the chief. I won't be there. But I am committed, and our department is committed to making this the best facility that we can make for the town of Wakefield, and to make sure that when someone comes into that lobby at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're going to be serviced. They're not going to have to sit there or find a phone. It's only written in English, by the way. Or some young child comes in at 3 in the afternoon who can't fathom, how do I get the police officer here and reach to a phone? That troubles me. That's the stuff that keeps police chiefs and fire chiefs up at night. So I do disagree. There are issues that have to be dealt with, and it seems like every few months there's another potential catastrophe that lands on either my desk or Chief Sullivan's desk. And, I thank everybody for where we are today, and I hope that this will continue on down the road, because I firmly feel that we're going in the right direction here. So, I mean, if anyone has any specific questions, we'd love to answer them.
To go off of what Ed said, and I absolutely agree with you, I'm not convinced that 13 years ago, best practices from a police chief's mind was put in place when this was built, because it couldn't have been. I was in new departments 15 years ago that did not look like this. And I'm not saying it on the building committee, I'm talking about the law enforcement person that was advising you. I have faith, Chief, that you can really look at best practices to see what else is out there. Even though you might not benefit from it, that I do have faith that you know what is needed in the 21st century policing, and I think that's what was missing, very much so. Forget about the bad sheetrock and everything I saw when I went on the tour. I mean, that's what is critical to me, that the kid can pick it up, that we have someone who doesn't speak English, for the love of God, that can ask for help. So I have faith that, like you said, an $8 million lawsuit's a quick one. That could happen very easily. So to me, this makes a lot of sense, and I think the forced thought that from the law enforcement perspective, with great plans and a building, permanent building committee, makes a huge difference that can overcome issues that we're not going to have again.
Thank you, and I want to take it another step forward. I hope everybody understands in this room tonight that the reason we're here with such a successful plan is we had great guidance on this. Thank you, Janet, and HKT. They were tremendous from the beginning, but you probably just heard me say we. This was put together by the command staff and the input of the Wakefield Police Department. We went out and we talked to the officers, we talked to the unions, we talked to both genders of officers, what was needed, and the command staff, lieutenants and the deputy chief, everybody sat in a room together and figured out what was needed. This was not a one-person show or a two-person show. And it wasn't a wish list, because we sat down and we brainstormed and we actually said, no, that's not gonna fly. That's not where we wanna go. We have to put it into perspective. So there's a lot of forward thinking in that building. And a lot of that forward thinking comes from the men and women that work there, whether they've been on the job 3 months or been on the job 30 years.
Any other questions?
Well, I think the next step is that we will set up tours through the chief's office for both this group, finance committee, and really do a public outreach. We really want to get the public on board with this, because this is something that's important to the community. It's going to be on the docket in April town meeting or May town meeting, and then we can move forward quickly from there. So I want to thank you. It's a great report. It's pretty long, pretty comprehensive. I've read it.
Thank you,
And thank you.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Thank you. I'd like to go on to the next item on the agenda, please. We need to vote for the approval of the November 6th, 2017 regular town meeting warrant. So moved. Seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. AmeriCal Civic Center rental rates. Mr. McGrath.
Gotta wake up Mr. McGrath over there. Poor guy.
You're finally here, sir.
Thank you guys for having me tonight. So, as you know, we took over the Civic Center March 1st, and a lot has changed since we've been in there. When we got there, we found that rental rates were literally, for the drill hall and for the Heritage Room, were all over the map. There was no rhyme or reason as to who was charged what and why. Deals were made for certain groups, and others like myself, even though, on paper it said $60 an hour for the drill hall, $40 for the Heritage Room. I walk into the rec department, we would charge $60 an hour. Other groups playing pickup basketball at night would charge $30 an hour. Or somebody was charged $200 a month to use it Monday, Wednesday, Fridays for an hour each day. No rhyme or reason. It just didn't make sense. So the first thing we did was try to adhere to the letter of the agreement that was already in place, and then look at it and say, okay, what makes sense? So I reached out to some of the other communities surrounding, or other places that had facilities similar to ours. The Civic Center is very unique. I can tell you right now, we are the envy, or the Wakefield Recreation Department is the envy of every local rec department, because nobody else has anything like it. Reading has Matera Cabin, which is a nice little space. I equate that to the Heritage Room. Right? That's what we're talking about. When I was in Arlington, we had Gibbs Gym, which was part of an old middle school. Okay, that's kind of like the drill hall, but not nearly to the same size. So it's hard to find anything that's similar to what we have. So I just tried to find all these different spaces, what they charge, and how we could do it that would work best for us. We have a lot of unique renters for these spaces. We have a lot of nonprofit organizations or youth groups that come in. I don't want to charge them the same rate as an in-town adult basketball group. I just find them to be very different. And then we had a lot of out-of-town groups that would come in to use, especially the drill hall. They would have these huge elaborate parties. They were great, but they weren't Wakefield-based. And that's okay. Their money's green. We'll take theirs too. But we wanted to charge them something a little different. So we created a scale where our youth, and this again for the drill hall, our youth groups are Wakefield nonprofits, have to be Wakefield nonprofit, and our tenants of the building are $35 an hour. I find that to be actually quite cheap, but also quite fair. We want to take care of them, make sure that all those groups are serviced first. Our Wakefield resident groups, again, before on paper was $60 an hour. I wanted to reduce that. I wanted to make sure that we're, again, taking care of our own. So I want to make that $50 an hour. And then for those for out of town who want to do a rental for a big party or whatever it is, or a trade show, $100 an hour. They're bringing in large groups, large spaces. They should be able to take care of that. As far as the Heritage Room, the Heritage Room is used really as a meeting space. I host a lot of classes in there, but otherwise it's a meeting space. So we want to charge, the tenants, nonprofits, youth organizations, $25 an hour. Again, something affordable for them to be able to go and use. A resident, they want to have a baby shower, whatever it is, $40 an hour. Again, I find that to be quite reasonable, and that's what that's what was previously being charged. And then those that are coming from outside of town, $60 an hour. And then if there's a school or a town government that wanted to do, another organization that wanted to do a meeting, we want to take care of them free, especially if the space is available. So those are kind of some things we've come up with. The facility before was also very loosey-goosey with their alcohol policy. You come in whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted to. One thing that I brought to Steve's attention was, I was not comfortable with that. That's something that actually kept me up at night. Very different problems than the chiefs have, but that definitely kept me awake. That my name's on a permit saying, yes, go ahead, have whatever you want in there. So we've gone to town council, and town council has said, anybody who wants to come in and have alcohol, we can do that, but they have to get a one-day liquor license. I think that's great. And then for large groups, we want to do a $250 security deposit, because like I said, we found these large groups would have large parties, and there would be food everywhere. That's not their fault. It was contained to certain areas of space, but I'm telling you, the next day, that space was pretty much unusable, because it just took a lot of time to get it back up to a certain level that we expect. So those are some of the things that we've done as far as the rates for the drill hall and for the Heritage Room. As far as the tenants go, so we are looking at different tenant rates. Again, no rhyme or reason behind who was charged what or why. When I was given the facility and was handed all the information finally, Ann Miller, who'd kind of taken over as the steward of the facility from November on, went through and found, because nobody had any leases. The Boys and Girls Club has a lease that is good through next August, and the food pantry has one that's good through November of 2019. They're the only people who have a lease. Nobody else has anything anywhere that anybody could find before we got there. So Ann went through and checked the square footage and what people were being charged per square foot. But again, it was everywhere. Tom Merchant, who has a storage closet downstairs, is paying $15.63 per square foot, whereas Wakefield Soccer was paying $4.03 per square foot. Kind of a big disparity. So we wanted to kind of close the gap in, like use groups for their space would be charged one rate, and so the storage closets would have one rate, and we wanted to have a minimum $500 per year for the space. And then the larger groups who are JC Marketing, the Boys and Girls Club, those groups are charged another rate. And the Boys and Girls Club being our anchor tenant was kind of the model that we were using everybody else after. So I think you all have the proposed rates that we're looking at. And one thing that we really want to do too is highlighting the food pantry. We looked at what they were charged and what they're being charged and what we had proposed. And it's one thing that myself, Steve, and Tony had been involved in conversations. We weren't comfortable with charging them what a proposed rate would be. In discussions with the food pantry, and I'm lucky to be able to talk to them basically every day, I found out that for every dollar that they can save, they can get $4 worth of food. It's pretty staggering. And when, again, I say fortunate enough to see it, because I get to see it every day. There's a lot of people that go in and out of that facility who need a lot of help. So one plan that we'd like to see is, if we're able to do this, is add a second meter for the food pantry so we can find out what their actual usage is of electricity. and eventually charge them just their electrical bill. I think that would save them a lot. We think, I mean, we don't know the real numbers, but I know they have some relatively updated new equipment, so it should be cost efficient. And if we can do that, we can definitely help the community a little bit more. So I don't know if you guys have any questions.
Tony, you have anything you want to add before we go into questions?
No, when we first started this maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, it was kind of interesting. We looked at the rates, we just, like Dan showed, they were just all over the place. But, to be able to tell, the Wakefield Food Pantry that, maybe a year down the line that you're going to go rent-free and save $21,000 or so, whatever they're paying. So that can be reinvested and buy $80,000 worth of, food.
Right.
But it's just a great thing. It's a great story, and it's one of the reasons I'm, running for office.
I think the other thing is, if I can, Mr. Chairman, even with, right now, there's one electrical meter. So included in your rent is your electrical bill, which you can imagine the food pantry with their freezers and refrigeration and what have you is drawing most of that. Everybody else is, not that much at all. So separating that out, which we're going to do because we're going to have the panel redone anyway by the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department. We can kind of figure that out and phase this in or go rather quickly. It's a great story even having the food pantry there. They do a great job. The other issue is, though, we did want to make sure that we would cover the cost of the building. That's something that's very important. And right now, $108,000 a year goes back to DPW for covering that cost, including in that is some of the electrical bill. We feel we can still do that on just the regular tenants' rates. And then really looking forward programmatically, what can we do with the other people that are coming in? And more, I'm not going to say people, citizens are using this, are finding this as a good place to have. I think we've had a lot of baby showers, it seems to me. There's a baby boom going on. And for them, it's a great deal for a couple $100 to have the baby shower there. So it's working out well.
And the other thing I'm working on with Dan is, first of the year, is that when somebody books a baby shower and they said, what do you have for restaurants available? We'll put together a list of Wakefield's, restaurants and say, here's a list of restaurants locally. We prefer to use them.
Yeah, preferred vendors.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we tried to hit all those things.
I was just wondering, Dan, just on the hourly, what is the break even on that? Do you have a sense of like the hourly room rentals?
Honestly, I couldn't be. It's all electrical, really. I mean, we have a custodian on duty now who's DPW hired, who's there from 2 to 10, Monday through Friday. As I understand it, a custodian will be added for weekends as well. I don't know how soon they're starting. So right now, depending on what the nature of the rental is, I might be going there to open it, so we're saving. Otherwise it could be a custodial detail. I think our rates are very much in line with other facilities. And I think we're being very fair to the people who are renting. That's what we want to draw more business there. When we took it over, I found a lot of holes in the schedule that I think can be easily filled. I don't know that it was aggressively marketed before. I don't know that people even knew it was there. I think now that they know, my phone and my email, it doesn't stop. And that's a great place to be. We're only going to have more and more people come in, and once I think we're there for a full year, we can really see what the costs are. I'm going off old information. I don't know that every dollar was ever accounted for. I can't say whether it was or wasn't. I know there's no contracts for renters on just if you want the drill hall. There's no contract. We have one for everybody that comes through us now, so we can kind of log who, what, when, where, why, and what we needed to do to cover that. So I think in a year, I'd come back and say, this is what the cost was. Right now, I'm just grasping.
But at these rates, I mean, you're comfortable that we're not losing money by running the electricity, so a group can like play hoops for a couple hours.
Yeah.
We're ahead of it that way, no doubt, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Dan, my questions are all for the downstairs. Is the kitchen fully operational now?
No, it's not.
Okay, so how long is it going to be before that kitchen is fully operational?
That's gonna be a bigger project. That's gonna
Okay,
be.
so you're losing a lot of potential income by not having that done. Because when I was a director on the board of the Civic Center, we talked about doing that kitchen over just to get the banquets into the drill hall.
Yeah.
Because that was where your money is.
Right.
Okay, so if you can concentrate on figuring out how that can be done, and making it somewhere where they can actually bring the food in, keep the food hot, so that they're not worrying about that aspect of it. I think that would make a lot more sense on the use of the drill hall long term.
Sure. And the Boys and Girls Club had, spoken about putting investment in there as well. They were looking at some potential grant money that they could obtain.
And upgrading of the restrooms downstairs is a long-term project too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of long-term projects.
I know
We're just scratching the surface.
I know there's a handicapped accessible restroom downstairs that's not utilized right now because it's not accessible.
Yep.
And I know that the kitchen area is always something that I found that they didn't move forward with earlier instead of letting it go to the point where it is now. But I applaud you on getting this reevaluated and back on track and looking like it's going to finally turn around and show profit.
I think so.
Well, one thing, Mr. Chairman, we will be bringing one-day liquor licenses to this board, as we do for other facilities in town. Just so you know, that's going to happen.
Can I ask a question? So all the groups other than Boys and Girls Club and the food pantry, so are you going to sign leases with them? Contracts?
We will be doing new leases for everybody. Yeah.
And a year long?
They would be. I would anticipate to be longer than a year. The other ones have been 5 years typically. I know the Boys and Girls Club is looking for something even longer than that. They want a real long-term commitment to the town and from the town. So that's something that we'll be exploring probably right after the new year.
So I'm just going to finish my
Oh,
thought.
go ahead.
So as you look at your space and you look at all those projects, something that's I've heard in Wakefield would be really cool is shared office space that people could rent. And if one of these tenants don't come, that would be a great location. And I know there's a lot of interest in having that in Wakefield.
Yep.
So something as you get the
There's some
kitchen done
beautiful
and
spaces there.
yeah, and like someone needs an office for a week or something, some cubicles, that would be great.
Mostly, I think, everything was brought up that I wanted to bring up, but a couple things. Turnaround's tremendous. I know Tony put a lot of time and energy into it, and you've done a great job. The rates are in line. It's a great usage for the place, having something in sync with rates instead of the random. The one thing you mentioned earlier about the food pantry, though, I know they making it free, and then you talked about the electrical. I mean, I know it's a lot of electrical, and I don't know the numbers, and as someone on an ex-FinCom person would say, well, what's the numbers, but at the same time, it should just be totally free for the food pantry. I don't even care about the electrical. I don't even care.
The goal.
They just do so much good. You just mentioned a 1-to-4 ratio. That's just, and I don't think anyone would argue that point here that I don't know what it would cost, but it should be free for those guys.
It'd be interesting to see
such demand.
What their actual use is.
Right. It's okay to have the second meter, I think, to find out, but I think that the goal ultimately should be to have it free for them, because I don't know anyone who does, except for the fire and police, of course. But the food pantry is to serve so many people, which is
a lot more than you think, too.
Which is scary to begin with, right?
200 a month, I think, is their number.
Is that right? So the necessity, they just it's such a needed. I hate to take $1 away from them. Never mind whatever that energy bill is.
Yeah.
But we should work out trying to pay for that.
Any other comments?
No, that's good.
We did no decision from us, right?
No, I think these rates were also run by the Recreation Commission, and they unanimously supported it. They'll go in effect January 1st.
Correct.
And I think I'd like the board to approve them. It's our building.
When they come in.
No, right now.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion then to approve the rates as presented to us in the document within our packet for the Civic Center rental rates. So moved. Second, any discussion? Hearing none? Oh,
I'm abstaining. I
Thank you.
serve on one of the boards
Yeah,
of
then
this
good.
board, yeah, so I'm abstaining.
all in favor? Aye. Opposed? One abstention.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we really need to thank Dan for doing a
Yes.
great job down there.
Thank you.
And Tony's putting a lot of work on this too, so we thank you.
Thank you all.
Great job.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Fabulous.
We'll make it home by 10:10.
All right.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, let's go on to the next item. Request for American Legion to sell buddy poppies from October 28th, 2017 to November 11th, 2017.
So moved.
Yeah,
Moved,
second.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Fire union contract. We are voting to approve.
Yes, as we discussed a couple meetings ago, this is the last of our unions to settle for this round. I'll be starting with DPW, library, and clerical, I believe, in the winter, as they're all up on 6/30/18. Like our other contracts, this is a 3-year contract through June 30th, the year 2000. Cost of living increases are consistent with all other contracts. 1.5% on July 1st, 2017. 1.5% every 6 months thereafter through January 1st, 2020, which will bring them to June 30th, 2020. We really mirrored the police contract on this. Really looking forward, losing people that have been there a long time. It costs us a lot of money to hire and train and send new people to the academy. So as they go out 15, 20, and 25 years, there would be steps of step of 2%. No more uniform stipend, with $850 going to the base. One of the most important items that the union had discussed was they do want to discuss the position of deputy chief. What we'd like to do is have a committee set up by January 1st of 2018, which is just around the corner, to discuss this with a recommendation coming forward in a year. I mentioned on my presentation that the cost of the contract is $140,000. It's taken out of free cash because we've already set the budget for the year. And basically, that's it, if there aren't any other questions.
Members of the board? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the fire union contract that was described to us tonight in the previous meetings.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And I do want to thank the fire chief for his
Thank you very
help on
much.
this.
Thank you, Chief Sullivan.
Thank you, chief.
Chief, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
Smart man.
He got the vote, he's ready.
That's it, he's done.
Sunset.
Okay, next item on the agenda, open meeting law adoption of a municipal website as official method of
Yeah,
posting.
this is really affirming what the board has been doing since the changes occurred in the open meeting law. And how we post meetings. The board may have remembered years ago, we not only had to post them on the website, we actually used to have to take paper copies down to the police station because it was open 24 hours a day, so people could actually look at the paper copy of the agendas. Well, that was very burdensome, and the Attorney General's office came out and said if you put it on the website and you did you can see it at Town Hall, it's posted there, that this is where you find our agendas. So the Attorney General actually just gave out some new regulations, and if anybody's interested, I have a red line copy. Maybe some of the attorneys here would like to look at it. But what we really should do is we should reaffirm the fact that the board has adopted 940 CMR 29.03 Section 2B1, which really says we're adopting the municipal website as the official method of posting. There's no difference in what we're doing. We've been doing it exactly right, but town council and I would feel would be more comfortable if we reaffirmed that.
I'll entertain a motion that we reaffirm the adoption of municipal website as official method of posting.
So moved.
Okay, second? Any discussion on that, Matt?
We'll just, for the charter, I'm sorry, the Charter Commission, we just talked about this interestingly enough at our last meeting, that we need to change the language in the charter because it talks about like the paper copies and all of that,
Yeah.
so this is great.
Charter talks about a lot of things about mailing things to people.
Yeah, no,
it's
this
crazy.
is perfect.
Switching up.
Are we also going to have it in print, though, say in the newspaper? Is that a requirement at present?
There's no, you mean board agendas?
Yes.
No, there's no requirement as present to put board agendas there. The paper may or may not, for board meetings, may or may not post there isn't even a meeting. We don't have, that doesn't really matter. There are public hearings we need to put in the paper by statute, but for our meetings, what we've been doing for the last so many years is putting it on the website.
This is for all open meetings, so
All open meetings.
School committee, everything.
School committee, subcommittees, yeah.
Perfect.
No further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Request from the Lucius Beebe Memorial Library to accept and expend the gifts to the library in the amount of $1,768.44 from various donors with thanks.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Request from the Council of Aging to accept and expend the gift or gifts to the Council of Aging in the amount of $6,117 from various donors with thanks.
So moved.
Moved, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. We are here to renew the agreement of lease with the SEAM Collaborative. Mr. Mayo.
Yes, as the board may be aware, the Yule School, which is in Greenwood, still remains under, still is a educational facility, so it still remains under the, I'm going to say, guidelines or control of the school committee. What the school committee does is that they have created a consortium in the area of, with some other districts, about providing special ed services, kind of keeping that in-house and saving some money by doing it. So the Yule School has been used this way for, oh my gosh, 10 years now, I would say. And what happens is that because we, under the charter, are the custodian of the properties, we need to sign the lease along with the school department. I will tell you that it generates about $103,000 per year in rent. But more than that, we see a great cost avoidance, probably a little over $103,000 a year, by keeping some of our special ed kids either at the Yule School or within the consortium. I tell you, there's 60 students from multiple districts at the Yule School. That's it. School committee has already approved this. Yeah.
So vote, right?
You vote, yep.
So I'll entertain a motion that we vote to the agreement of lease with the SEAM Collaborative for the Yule School. So moved. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
I think there's just one point to this. I happened to read, I went through and read the lease, and it says that there's a monthly amount due, but it doesn't specify the date by which each monthly amount's due. So for the default provision to be enforced, it should really say on the first of every month. It says July 1st as every month thereafter, but not a date certain.
I will certainly take that up with Town Council Mullen, who I'm happy isn't here to hear this. So. Yeah, we'll take care of that. They have never missed a payment, by the way.
I think just because it seemed like it was like the last lease, I compared it with the last lease that was signed to this one, and it seems to be I think a common error.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Warrant review and signing, Mr. Longo, all set with the warrants?
Yes, signed, for school lunches, travel for town employees, and GIC, books and publications, vet assistance, sped services. So, just so you know, I go down the list and question everything that doesn't make sense. So we're good.
Thank you, Mr. Longo. In your correspondences, you had a booklet from the Massachusetts Municipal Association. I believe that's the beacon that we're going out.
No, there's a letter from that, but that's okay.
I didn't see the letter.
The letter is...
Oh, it's in here?
Yeah, it's in
that's
there,
right.
yeah.
It's part of this package, yeah. Item 10, matter is not anticipated by the chairman within the last 48 hours of the meeting. Let's go around the table, starting with my right.
You're right. How far over on the right?
Yeah, well...
I've got two things. First, I wanted to congratulate Wakefield Police Department on the recent certification. They received the state certification from the Mass Police Accreditation Commission. That's something that, it's voluntary, and we are exceptional at what we do. And it's a real testament to the police department's commitment to our community, that they continue to go above and beyond every day and in every way. So I just want to make sure we acknowledge that. Also, this past Saturday, WAVE, with the Wakefield Alliance Against Violence, had a 5K that was tremendously successful. Congratulations to them. I know the numbers are preliminary, but they may have raised close to $7,000 in that event, and that's great. They do great work, and so I congratulate them and everyone involved, especially Officer Rando, Amy Rando, who has been involved with that organization and does some really great work for them. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll pass it on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to thank both chiefs for, being here tonight. We have it, our first responders, we have it very, very good. Great. 2 weeks ago, Wakefield lost a great man, and I saw what Wakefield does so well, and that's just, circle the caravan and support the family, 2 kids and the wife.
Thank you, sir.
Just to let you know, housekeeping, Friends of Lake Quannapout have a annual breakfast Sunday, November 12th, 2017, 8 a.m. to 11 at the Bear Hill Country Club, and they look for just requested donations of $15. And if you can go, that would be great to support the FOLQ.
Thank you, sir. Marie.
Just to piggyback off of what Peter just said, FOLQ did a Spring Lake cleanup this weekend. If anyone wants to see all the trash that they've collected around, it's kind of interesting to see a lot of plastic bags that they collected. So, yeah, and it's a great event, the annual breakfast. If people can make it, it's great.
After 3 hours, I'm good.
After 3 hours, you're
Yeah,
good.
I can't.
Would you
Can't
like to
come
go
up with
next,
a
sir,
thought.
before
I
I go?
have a couple of quick things.
Go ahead.
The Wakefield Human Rights Commission is in their speaker series has a speaker tomorrow night. They asked me to pass this on. Martin Henson at the Savings Bank Theater, 60 Farm Street. I'll pass these out so you all have them.
Thank you.
Number one, and I'm sorry that, last week I was asked whether we have the money from National Development, and I will tell you on Friday, I did receive a check for $525,000 for National Development. So thank you for the board for their support on this. $425,000 is for water, and $100,000 will come back, and we'll see what the board wants to do with that. So
Thank you.
we will discuss that. So that was great. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The only couple of items I have is for upcoming meetings. When town council is here, I'd like to bring up the issues regarding trash receptacles down in the downtown. Just to give you a background a little bit, there is a number of buildings where they are using our black trash barrels as their public spot to throw their trash. So we had town council, Steve had town council look into it and find that there are regulations that prohibit them from doing it. And I would like this board to make a recommendation as to how we should proceed with that issue in actually 2 blocks of the downtown. The other issue that I'd like to bring up, but we also have on the agenda, would be approval for the this year's holiday stroll as an agenda item as well. So those 2 items to be added, please, to next. And if everyone can check their long-term calendars, November 30th, I would like to go into an executive session to discuss the town administrator's contract.
I'm not here.
It's a Thursday?
No, sorry. Is it 30th the wrong day? I'm sorry.
Am I in the wrong year on my?
No, I may have the wrong, I may.
No, it's a
27th.
It's a Thursday.
Sorry, 27th. Sorry, my apology.
We have a meeting scheduled that day. So.
Regular schedule.
Regular scheduled meeting. So you're not here?
I will be away.
I'd like to have a full board.
Up to you, Mr. Chairman.
What's the first meeting in December? I really would like to have a full board for that.
December 11th.
December 11th?
That'll be the meeting.
Yeah.
He'll be here for that, I'll guarantee you.
We can table it and make sure
Table,
everyone's
okay,
going to.
let me table this for the time being.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Let me table this for the time being and make sure that I get a date with everybody. I'll poll everybody and make sure that we're all available on that one date. And then we can move forward with that item. If there's nothing else said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for your time. Good night.